very good afternoon, everyone. I am Kadvi Rana, and I am delighted to welcome you all to this one of its kind virtual event, Evolve 1.0, presented by the Chamber of Visionary Supply Chain Leaders, also known as CVSCL, and organized by Logistics Insiders. For the uninitiated, CVSCL, which have set themselves a charter to improve the capability and performance of supply chain organizations in India, meets regularly to share experiences and learnings in supply chain management. The supply chain industry is evolving, and how? Newer innovations and technologies are making things possible that we once only dreamed about. It is only in reflection we get an impressive view of how much supply chain management can evolve in a relatively short time. The last 5 years, in particular, have brought an enormous amount of changes in our industry, many of which we embrace and others we adapt to work around. Today's event is very much based on this very change that we aspire to bring into our supply chain to make them more agile, more adaptive, and efficient. Evolve 1.0 will witness two discussion tracks today. Track 1 is titled Alternative Technologies for Sustainable Supply Chains, and Track 2 is titled EVs All Set to Revolutionize Last Mile Deliveries. So, we have two very interesting discussions, and I request you all to attend both the sessions. So now, without any further delay, let's jump right into our first discussion. Renewable energy resources are naturally replenishing fuel sources that can replace coal, oil, natural gas, and nuclear power with clean and reliable power with almost zero carbon emissions. With an aim to adapt to a more sustainable way of doing business, a sizable portion of the logistics industry is already switching to renewable selectively or throughout their supply chains. This switch can help supply chains decrease the long-term costs, provide them with price stability, mitigate future regulatory risk, enhance brand value, and much more. Now, as renewable energy gets more accessible and affordable than ever before, it has become even more crucial for the logistics industry to capture its benefit and for businesses to evaluate their supply chains for ways to switch to renewables. On this very note, I would now like to welcome Mr. Umesh Madhyan, who's the Vice President Supply Chain, Coca-Cola, and President of the Chamber of Visionary Supply Chains. Welcome to the show, sir. Mr. Madhyan.
Thank you, Karvi.
Mr. Madhyan will be moderating the very first session on alternative technologies for sustainable supply chains. Responsible for handling one of the largest supply chain systems in India, Mr. Madhyan has been formulating and implementing key supply chain strategies for Coca-Cola since 2013. He is an expert supply chain professional in multinational FMCG businesses with more than 20 years of experience under his wing. Mr. Madhyan is also part of the core committees of several industry associations. Mr. Madhyan, it's a pleasure to have you with us on this event today, and moderating this session for Evolve 1.0. Now, I would like to hand over the baton to you to take this discussion forward. But before that, a quick reminder to our audiences that we will be taking questions from you guys that our experts will be answering to. So please feel free to drop in your questions and queries in the comment section. Now over to you, Mr. Madhyan.
Thank you so much, Karvi. Good afternoon. Happy Saturday afternoon to everyone. I hope you all are doing safe in these times. You all are getting vaccinated on time. So before we start with exactly this, I would like to thank the governing body of CVSCL. I would also want to thank our official media partners logistics insider. So they have been instrumental in ensuring that we move on this journey in terms of creating a consortium of supply chain experts. So what does CVSCL do broadly? I would request each one of you to go through the website cvscl.org and try and understand what exactly we do and how do we contribute to the entire fraternity, to the entire supply chain as a society. So we are all a consortium of supply chain experts. What we do is we try and share best practices. So one of our biggest pillar, the first pillar is for sharing best practices, which is exactly what we are doing during this call. So the idea of this call was to ensure that we give you a glimpse of what happens inside CVSCL and what is the kind of knowledge bank do we have within CVSCL. This is the first time we are going public. This is the first time we are going live with Evolve 1.0. The idea is really to evolve. The idea is to open and appeal other supply chain professionals to please come become members of CVSCL and contribute along with us towards not only the society, not only towards supply chain, but also towards our own individual organizations by taking all of these learnings and the rich experience which this group has back into your desks and try to implement those practices. So we have chosen specifically these two themes which Karvi spoke about, so I'll not spend too much of time. What we'll do is straight jump into this discussion of alternative technologies for sustainable supply chains. Gone are the days where sustainability was a choice. Today, sustainability is a license to operate. It is super important for organizations like us, and not only like us, almost everyone, to ensure that you take care of the entire environment. You also take care as a corporate citizen. So as a part of community, it becomes super important to ensure that you save energy, you migrate to green energy, you take care of the renewable energy, and you ensure that you are a responsible corporate. So that's super important these days. And there are many such practices which organizations have already followed. And for smaller or medium organizations, it is difficult to fathom the fact that, okay, these are technologies which are available in India, which are affordable, and it is really possible to migrate to those kind of technologies. With that objective, let's start with the discussion. So before we start, let me just introduce our eminent panelists who will contribute and share their knowledge over the next 45 to 50 minutes. I would urge each one of you to please pay attention and take notes of these best practices and go into your comment section. Make sure you ask relevant questions so that we can come back to your questions at the end of the session about 45 to 50 minutes from now. All right. So starting with, by the way, none of our panelists need any introduction. All of these are super solid expert supply chain professionals. They are all super known in the industry. On LinkedIn, if you follow them very closely, it is an honor for me to introduce them and have this candid discussion with them and share and understand their knowledge and practices of their organizations on energy. So starting with Ashish, Ashish is a dear friend. He is also one of the very initial co-founder member of CVSCL. He represents Nestle as the supply chain director for the South Asia region. Ashish has been a transformation expert in all the areas of supply chain, and he has varied national, international exposure in countries like Thailand, countries like Egypt and Africa. So welcome, Ashish. Looking forward for this discussion.
Thank you,
Welcome
Vish.
to the panel.
Thank you, Vish.
Moving on, our next eminent panelist is Mr. Somnath Das. Again, a very dear friend from a different experience of mine when I was in Mumbai. We were into a different group where we used to share. That time, Somnath happens to be in Marico. So, welcome, Somnath comes with a two decades plus experience, again across supply chains, including manufacturing. So, he has been from PepsiCo to Marico and currently serves as supply chain director for Nivea India. So, looking forward for the discussion, Somnath.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Umesh. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. So moving on, our next panelist is Mr. Sushil from KNP Energy. He is the CEO of KNP Green Energy. Now, of course, any sustainable topic we cannot end without talking about green energy, without talking about alternate fuels, especially in this era where diesel, petrol, and fuel for logistics is extremely crucial, and it's increasing at a very rapid pace. So I think to make this world more greener, let's have Sushil on the panel with his ideas on how do we exactly migrate to an alternative fuel for logistics, most important area from a carbon emission point of view.
Yeah.
So welcome, Sushil.
Thank you so much, Mr. Umesh. Thank you.
Moving on, welcome. So moving on, Mr. Sheikh Parvez from VGuard joins us in the capacity of General Manager Supply Chain. Looking forward for this discussion, Mr. Sheikh. He again comes with 2 decades plus experience across different functions, and he's particularly an electronics supply chain expert with companies like Dish TV, Panasonic under his experience, and he's also a very known speaker and a very known writer. So looking forward to your articles and looking forward to the discussion, Sheikh. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Sheikh, we can't hear you. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, thank you all.
So with this, let's deep dive into the discussion with Ashish. So Ashish, please help us understand your best practices in terms of your organization, and also take us through the entire value stream. How do you see sustainability across supply chain? Over to you, Ashish.
Thanks, Umesh, and thank you, everyone, and good afternoon to all my panelists. So before I start there, let me build some perspective and see that why we are talking about this. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this climate pledge that many countries and companies have done, and objective is to reduce the increase in temperature, global temperature, which is happening. So if we were to do business as usual till 2050, it is estimated that the global temperature will rise by 3.2 degrees. And once it, God forbid, never happens, but if it happens, it'll create havoc. And it'll create havoc in the sense that there'll be extreme floods, droughts, 40 to 50% of the agriculture produced in the world would get destroyed. And there are a lot of other implications which are there. So the climate pledge says that if we were to put in sustainable supply chain practices in the entire ecosystem, we can limit this 3.2 degree increase to 1.5 degree increase. Now, is it good enough? Answer is no. But 1.5 degree would enable us to live on this planet. Let me say this way. So that's the basic objective that we are looking at. And with that, there are various commitments that many companies and countries have made. And one of the commitments is to be carbon neutral by 2050. That means whatever carbon footprint that we have today in our value chain, we'll reduce it to zero. That means no net carbon addition to the environment. Now, when I look at from my company's perspective, Nestle, and we are basically a food FMCG company, and we start mapping this in the value chain, starting from our suppliers to upstream supply chain, to manufacturing, to logistics, and then to distribution and end of product life cycle. In our mapping, we found that more than 70% of the carbon footprint is part of our upstream supply chain, because we buy a big amount of agri-commodity products. So, for example, fresh milk and fresh milk equivalent ingredients. So we buy close to 650 million liters of fresh milk and fresh milk equivalent products for our dairy and nutrition product portfolio. And that is huge, right? Similarly, green coffee, wheat flour, oils, spices. So in order to manage the sustainability in the upstream supply chain, we have to start working with the suppliers, not only our tier 1 supplier, but tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers, so that we get down to the origin and start working on various forms in which we increase the productivity of the farmers, we educate them on good farming practices, be it good dairy farming practices, good sustainable and water harvesting, and so on and so forth. And it's a very long journey, because one, the farmers are not aware about this, and second, any change require first the mindset change, and then if you have to do it quickly by 2050, there's a lot of automation investment that will be required, which will add cost. And then basic question is, who will bear the cost? Now, when I look at it from a consumer's perspective, more and more consumers are today demanding, and they want to know that if they're eating a product, what is in their product? Okay, what are the ingredients? How is it manufactured? where is it coming from in terms of the whole value chain traceability, and is it sustainable or not. So this will become bigger as we go forward. So it is very important for us to manage it right now. Otherwise, there's a clear business risk also along with the climate change challenge that we have. So it's imperative for us to do this. So in short, we are doing few practices where in our coal mill district in Punjab, we are working with around we have around 100,000 farmers that we work with. In that case, we are working with around 1,000 farmers to start, and we are doing some pilots in which we are looking at good dairy farming practices. We are looking at how we can improve the heat stress of animals, especially in the weather like this. And whenever there's a heat stress, the productivity of animals go down. How can we work on better feed practices so that they get more nutritious feed? How can we manage the entire ecosystem across a dairy farm in terms of manure, in terms of water, so on and so forth. So it's a very long journey, but very, very interesting and very, very satisfying. And it will help us to then make our value chain sustainable, traceable, and sustainably managed. So this is one example that I could share from my experience. Thank you. And this is what I had to say briefly about the upstream supply chain. Over to my other colleagues who will then talk about the other aspects of the value chain.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Ashish, so much. Let's move on to packaging. So, Somnath, what do you share on the best practices you have from Nivea on specifically on packaging?
All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Umesh, and thanks CVSCL for this opportunity to learn and share. As I think very nicely started off by Ashish talking about the entire value stream mapping which Nestle has done, and similar practices are being done by many other organizations. And very rightly mentioned that a bulk of this carbon footprint is actually situated in the upstream, and also in the part where we, before we reach to the consumer, right? Of course, logistics is a part of it, but increasingly we are seeing that the right sourcing and the right packaging becomes a bulk, and of course the right manufacturing practices become a bulk of the carbon footprint that we have in the life cycle and the journey from our factories to the consumer. Just a few facts which I want to put here so that we register this in our mind that how big the problem is. Uh, about 1 million plastic bottles are purchased every minute globally, right? And almost 12 million tons of plastics enter ocean every year, right? And surprisingly, you would be surprised to know that hardly about 14% of the plastics packaging is actually recycled globally, right? And that's the extent of the problem. About 1 million plastic bottles getting into the system globally, and hardly 14% of the plastic packaging is recycled globally. The other side of the story here is that within the group of around 18 to 25-year olds, if you see globally, people are significantly ready to almost 60% of them, more than 60% of them are actually ready to pay higher to get products which are more, environment friendly, protecting the environment and so on. So that's the context I wanted to set before we move ahead on packaging. Plastic packaging obviously becomes the most I think the most centerpiece in terms of the packaging discussion. But what we have also realized that there's a lot of things that needs to be done beyond plastic. Of course, plastic becomes a primary topic of discussion. I don't have to tell this learning group about the 4 R's that we already know. So recyclability, reusability, reduction, and the latest one, which is becoming a very, very important topic of discussion, is the recycled content. So how much of your product or packaging is actually recycled. Recyclability obviously means that what percentage of packaging that you're putting out is actually recyclable. And Umesh should be knowing here, beverage companies more or less across the globe are looking at 100% recyclable products packaging, and they already are at a very high range. They're already at a 80% plus in terms of recyclable packaging. The same is the case with other consumer goods companies, whether it's a food manufacturer or a cosmetic products company like us, right? So recyclability becomes a very large topic, and everyone is looking at almost 100% recyclable packaging, whether it is plastic or any other form, primarily plastic. Then reusability is becoming another interesting topic. And interestingly, we are seeing globally glass bottles are actually making a comeback, right? We have seen the shift from glass to plastics, and probably we are also seeing a rise on the of the glass bottles. uh, uh, we are not only seeing the rise of glass bottles, but we are also seeing new models coming in which we are talking of companies like Loop. They are a solution provider where the consumer can come to their station, give back the used container of the product, and take back a fresh product. And Loop in turn cleans and makes the container reusable, fills in and keeps it ready for next round of use. So reusability is becoming another interesting area of work. Reduction, obviously, we know for many years, reduction has been the way of life for us. Reducing the plastic content, reducing the packaging overall has been an area of work. And recycled content, many of the companies which have taken the plastic the climate pledge have also looked at using the recycled content, and that is also becoming more and more an ambit of legislation as well. So I think these are four R's that that we are well versed of, but these are also taking new shapes, new dimensions in terms of interesting work that is happening on there. I would like to share a few interesting examples from our organization, Biased Off or Nivea, as you might call it. But before that, I also want to talk about a bit of a change that is happening because of this pandemic. uh, we are again seeing regulation on packaging standards changing. There are some countries where we are actually seeing plastic usage going up because of regulations, where you are required to, for example, package your meat in plastic packagings and so on and so forth. So that is becoming a reverse, pressure on sustainability. We have seen online packaging, and we know that if we go step outside the door, we would definitely have an Amazon or Flipkart or any of those online shopping box out there. And we also know amount of packaging that goes into that, so that becomes another variable where we can make a impact. And obviously innovation in recycling, regional local supply chains, with the disruption in the supply chain for packaging material and everything else in the supply chain, there is a shift in terms of regional versus local supply chain, and that is also eliminating some of the having an impact on the sustainability package usage. So this is the context that I want to set. Maybe one or two examples that I want to talk about, which we are doing right here in India. One good example is we have recently gone live with what we call a Nivea Care Box, so which is basically e-com ready packaging. It is a frustration-free packaging. It is a package which can be just stickered on by our platform partners, e-com partners. You just have to put the address, and it is ready to send. You do not need additional packaging material to to protect it and so on and so forth. And we are also making it not with completely filled with plastics, and it is being received extremely well by our consumers, right? I mean, that's one thing that I want to talk about. So e-commerce is one area where definitely there is a significant opportunity, not only from the platforms themselves, the e-commerce companies themselves. A lot of work is happening from that side, but from a brand owner point of view also, there is a lot of work that we can do and join hands with them. Another example I want to talk about is, we have recently launched what we call the Naturally Good range. So it is basically a set of skincare products, which is deodorants, deo sprays, roll-ons, body lotions, and all that, where we have actually reduced the use of plastic by almost 50%. The ingredients itself is 98% naturally, natural ingredients. That's the definition of that. And the bottles, if you see the body lotion bottles, actually are the squeezy bottles which can be rolled up like a toothpaste bottle. So, which has also reduced our plastic consumption by almost 50% in those. One interesting fact about that is we have seen, these products actually being lapped out hugely by the tier 2 and tier 3 city consumers. So, which basically is saying that environmentally conscious packaging or products is not just limited to people right here in the metros and the top cities, but also very much welcomed by people from tier 2 and tier 3. I talked about Loop. I talked about Carebox. One thing I also wanted to highlight is that it is not just plastics, it is not just reducible packaging, but you can also look at examples beyond that. For example, we have a large portfolio of deodorant sprays where we use aluminum cans. Now, aluminum also is in the process of manufacturing aluminum, there is a complete usage of, there is a CO2 emission which happens. We have looked at reducing, increasing our percentage of recycled aluminum, and in fact, we have gone live with a product not in India but outside of India with an aluminum can which is 100% recycled, thereby reducing the CO2 emission completely, very significantly lower than a earlier aluminum can. So, I just wanted to highlight back on examples which are here and now, which are available in the Indian market, work which is happening in Indian organizations, and also work which is happening outside in Biosdorf. 4 Rs are the principles that we are working on in terms of packaging. Of course, there's a larger gamut of work that is happening, which we have undertaken as part of our environmental climate pledge. So that's all from my side here. So over to you, Umesh.
Thank you so much, Somnath. Super rich ideas, super rich discussion, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Awesome ideas, and there are many such clues which internally also we can touch base later, Somnath, and understand on how exactly this is happening so that we can replicate these good ideas.
Absolutely.
Now, moving on to manufacturing, I think from a manufacturing standpoint as well, again touching upon what Somnath said on reducing, one big key lever is also reducing the waste, reducing the entire emissions which you do by consuming power, energy, etc. So I think one of the great ideas which we were also working on is EMS, which is energy management solutions. So we have, of course, one very known digital factory in west of India in Sanand in Ahmedabad, where we have EMS and a digital system. But we are also right now working with, for example, Schneider for Mumbai, where they are helping us to ensure we consume and distribute energy to the different energy consuming parts of the factory in a way that it is more economical and it is more sustainable, and it reduces our consumption. So those are also ideas which once upon a time were very expensive, were seen as very digital and very unaffordable. But this solution, for example, which we are working with Schneider for Mumbai, comes at less than 1 year payback. So it's a super exciting way to ensure that we reduce our footprint in terms of energy consumption. So that is also something which we can start. So I thought I'll just touch upon manufacturing a little bit before we move on to our friend Sheikh. So from a V-Guard perspective, Mr. Sheikh, please help us understand the best practice you have, because you handle a very critical component called batteries, which is not very easy to handle
Yeah.
from a component standpoint. So back to you, Mr. Sheikh.
Yes.
Did we lost you?
Yeah. So am I audible now?
I think you're back.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just lost you and you're just back, Mr. Sheikh. You'll have to repeat probably.
Sure. So good afternoon once again to all of you and the participants who are hearing us. So to begin with, I will just start with a small story. So the story goes, and I think this was a very good ad that had come up, and a lot of us would have seen. that ad, and I'm really touched by that ad where they call the children and the parents, okay, in one room, and they take the parents to one another room and they give them crayons to color to make any diagram or any picture they want. So the parents go to another room and they do the drawings with the colors and they make beautiful pictures. And it's so once the painting of the parents are over, then they ask the parents to come back to that room and but to leave the crayons that is there, and then they ask the children to go to that room and do the drawing with the crayons that the parents have left. Okay, and then this small children, they go to that room and then again they do their painting, so whatever they like to do, but with the leftover crayons that is there, the parents have left. So when the picture of these two group are put in front, so we see the parents pictures are very colorful, very bright, and they have used all the bright colors. And when they see the picture of the small children, the pictures are gray and black in nature because all the colors have been used by the parents and they are used with the leftover colors, and with that whatever best they do, so they do very good paintings, but those are color of those paintings are either in gray or black or a very subtle colors. The colors are not that bright. So the message that they want to convey is here that we are the last generation. This is, I read somewhere, that we are the last generation who can do something about Mother Earth. If we don't do, then I am sure that the future generation are really going to curse us, because we will leave nothing for them, because we would be depleting the entire earth of all the resources, whether it is natural resources or any other resources, and we will be only giving them the leftovers, and which will be very difficult. So to connect with this story, there's another very good animated movie I think most of us would have seen, that is Wall-E. If you have seen that movie, it's a worth seeing movie, which you can see with the entire family. Wall is a very beautiful movie where it shows how the earth is over and there's only one small sapling, which this one robot tries to protect. And we all have become addicted to AI and all those things, and they have taken over control over us. Okay, so that's just to make that context that, see, we are the last generation probably who can do something for this earth. And we as corporate leaders, it becomes more because we are the ones who uses the resources to the maximum. So, but see, going for a scrapping in any organization, that is the crime, which I feel, because there we have utilized the natural resources, the human resources, electricity resources, the whatever resources we used, and then we are after converting those resources into product, and then we are scrapping those products. So that is the crime which we can do to the society. Okay, so taking my story forward, so we are into batteries, like Umesh told, we are, and battery is very critical. So here again, one very interesting fact is, so in one decade ahead, I think China was the #1 producer of battery in the globe. Okay, and battery disposal is the most difficult thing. So if you don't dispose the acid-laden battery properly, what is going to happen? That is going to like have a very drastic effect on us. And it is going to affect our physical ability, and also it is going to affect our mental stability. So it is going to have effect on the entire nervous system. So battery is that kind of a very sensitive product. Okay, this because it has lead content. So when China realized this, that after some generation, if they continue with battery production, their entire generation is going to be affected by this nervous system. So what they did, they immediately shut down all the factories. And they did away, they said, we are no longer going to produce batteries. So they just stopped it. And guess who? India took that opportunity as, we took it as an opportunity, and we are presently the #1 global producer of batteries. So we took this as an opportunity at the risk of we are always having power shortage. We are so as an organization, we can system to like dispose this battery. So they have a very good system where we have entered into an agreement where we give the used battery to them, and battery has the lead content is almost 85 to 90% when we are scrapping. So we give this acid-filled battery to them as it is conditioned, and they extract the lead out of it in a very scientific way, and the residues are given back to the nature in a biodegradable form. And we have a barter system. So whatever battery is extracted by them, as per the prevalent LIBOR rate, we again buy back those batteries from lead from them, and then again reuse it for producing fresh batteries. So that is a kind of thing we have done from our side, so that we are less, because actually if you see the local workshops and this local uh, where we are going for refurbishing our cars or refurbishing these batteries, they simply dispose this acid in the drains, and from the drains it goes to the river, and from river it enters to the food chain. So once it enters this food chain, it is going to be very detrimental for all of us. So it is going to affect our health. It is going to affect our mental health. So it is not just our. So it is directly attacks the nervous system. So when we as an organization we realized this, we did our bit, because scrapping again. You see, most of the organization, we also have to think as a corporate that how this scrapping can be maximum utilized, and we can do something so that it can either, like as Somnath said, it can be reused, recycled, or it can have a proper disposal process, so that it is in a degradable form, so that it is getting degraded in the natural way, and we are not hampering or we are not affecting the environment. So that is what I can say, because I am very emotional about environment, and I think we all should be very emotional about environment, and we should do our bit. So like in logistics also, we are now insisting our people to go for more bio fuel fueled vehicles and go for electric vehicles, so that we incentivize them and all those things. In warehouses also, we are doing a lot of transparent sheet, so that we can reduce the electricity consumption. We are going for LED lights in the warehouses, where so that our overall consumption is getting reduced. So these are the small initiatives, small things that we are doing from our side, so that we can reduce the electricity cost, and we are more environmental friendly. So we can, in fact, for us as a logistics guy, we have our warehouse sheds, right, which is a huge scope for putting it into panels. So I think if we put the solar panels on our warehouse roofs, wherever we are having PEB structure, so we will generate electricity, and plus the temperature within the warehouse will also come down. That will be a byproduct that we can expect, because we will be covering the warehouse with the solar panels, and that we can again give to the grid, power grid, and we can get a benefit out of it. So that is how we also start thinking in these lines, because see, whatever the government is saying, so I will not restrict myself from stopping whatever I feel like saying, because whatever government is saying, many corporates are saying, we are only saying English, we are only speaking English about sustainability, and we are not doing anything. Only little bit we do. We are so long, like I am my 20 years of career, I have worked for companies like Philips, Whirlpool, 3M. We have been talking about carbon credit, sustainability. It's all English we have spoken. Now it's time for action. So English has to stop. It has to translate into action. So over to you, Umesh.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Sheikh. We heard the story very well, but I think your battery recycling wala story got a little muddled up because of little network, I guess. But we made out that somehow you're trying to ensure that you reuse the same battery by buying it back from the chain, from the system, and doing it. So great examples. Now, from a manufacturing standpoint, I think a couple of ideas I loved you touched upon LEDs, which is something again which was non-economical quite long back. People were not moving to LEDs in terms of energy. Solar rooftops is a brilliant idea. Solar rooftops, not only from energy standpoint, what also I think happens is that people try to delay, or people try to assume that the payback of these will be only from a capex standpoint, which is why these technologies are not taking the pace which they ideally should. But there still are solutions where solar rooftop kind of solutions are available on lease. So I think you should look at from a lease standpoint, how does it make a payback? Correct. Of course, there are restrictions from state to state, but there are still considerable portions which can go on lease through solar energy, which people should definitely try. There are PPA, power purchase agreements, which you can do, where windmill is also an option which you can try for, which we are trying in Gujarat, for example. Very easily available and very progressive from a government standpoint as well there, that part of the country. So I think that's broadly on manufacturing. So we spoke about responsible sourcing through ideas from Nestle, through Ashish. We spoke about loop and the complication in recycling, collecting, and reusing plastic. Loved the idea on aluminium, of course, which Somnath shared. But we also realized that battery is also an equal. Uh, I'll have to choose my words very carefully. Battery is also an equal complexity item, if I may not call a devil exactly, but that's also
Yes,
an
it's
equally
damaging.
complex item like plastic. On how do
I
you
will
take care?
say it damages the environment.
Correct. So from an environment standpoint, yes, I think it's equally important for us to consider how do we manage that as well. Now, we of course cannot conclude a topic on sustainability not talking about logistics. Also, it comes as the last leg of the whole value stream, closer to the customer at the fag end of the supply chain, where we exactly service and where, how we say, the rubber hits the road. I think the greatest problem which we today have is fuel. Diesel has actually exactly doubled in less than 5 years. I was just looking at some numbers. If you realize from Jan till date, at 90 rupees at Delhi, it was supposed to be 74, 75 rupees way back in Jan. Now, this year, Jan, which means 20+% inflation is expected to be absorbed by supply chains like ours in 6 months, which is, it's practically impossible. We will have to work on, we broadly are working on three buckets, and the third bucket being the most difficult one. The first one, of course, is to ensure how we have efficiencies, how do we reduce waste, how do we ensure turnaround time, how do we have track and trace, etc., etc. The second bucket is a little next step of the first bucket, which is broadly on TMS. How do we install out of the box and very evolved transport management systems where we try and track the entire turnaround time and the entire cycle and map exactly dispatch as per the customer requirement of unloading time, etc., etc. So that's the second piece. Again, heavy investment. The third piece, which is super critical, super important, is alternate fuel, which is not easy. We have been working on it for long, and there is a lot less information available in public, and it is a little more complex, which is why we thought we'll dwell on this a little bit more. So there are two options. One is EVs, of course, which we will dwell into the next track, led by Saurabh immediately after this. The second one is biodiesel. How do we exactly use biodiesel? Now, starting with a little story about how we do at Coke. For the last 1.5 years, we have been grappling with how exactly we bring the usage of biodiesel and reduce CO2 emission, because this is an area where your CO2 emissions are at max in the entire value stream, when I mean. So basically, biodiesel is reducing your emissions by 95+%. So that's a good news. Is it abundantly available? People are not too sure. When I spoke to my procurement folks, and for the last 5 to 6 months, we did a full R&D and found out there are 27 to 29 biodiesel suppliers right now available in India, not concentrated in the south, but across the states, which again, information is not very easily available, so people don't think about moving or trying. We have been trying biodiesel in our owned trucks, HCCB Coke owned trucks, for the last more than 12 to 14 months now, 18 months now actually, and there is absolutely no problem. There are, of course, different theories that because of use of palm oil in biodiesel, there is definitely the engine which gets actually better instead of getting deterioration. But I'm saying there is still time to support that. Definitely there is no harm, because it's been more than a year right now. We are replicating big time. We have a huge commitment to Atlanta, a huge commitment to our parent organizations, that we will expand this to all India in the long range planning period, which is from 22 to 24, in the next 3 years. And there is a solid plan on this. We are working very closely with the people to build capacity and ensure we migrate. We have migrated in Andhra and Telangana already. The next plan is to migrate for Gujarat, followed by Karnataka, and we move on slowly, gradually. Now, having said this, this is a complex item because this is not an item which is abundantly available as petrol pumps or diesel pumps. There are no biodiesel pumps so easily available which you see off the road. What is the quality of biodiesel good for you? How should you exactly use it? Do you mix it in winters or do you use virgin like you use in summers? There are many such questions for which we have our expert, Mr. Sushil, on the call. And Sushil is the CEO, like I said, for KNP. Over to you, Sushil. Please educate us on how do we choose the biodiesel and how do we take this journey forward from a sustainable logistics standpoint.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Umesh. And that's a great that you have already taken up the initiative to participate into the journey of sustainability. And thank you to the entire SCL team for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to speak about which is very critical topic and very close to my heart. As Mr. Sheikh said, we all talk a lot about it, but not much being done on the ground. Okay. So I'll also explain what we do and how we are contributing to the environment. I'll give you some numbers. Till we have started about 2.5 years before, and so far we already saved about 30,000 metric tons of CO2 emission. So that's the first tick in the last 2.5 years. Second, we already saved about 1.5 million liter of oil which was supposed to go into drains or which was supposed to go back and come into our food chain again. So that we already saved up. This we have done in 2.5 years, and so there is a huge gap still exists, and there is huge opportunity exists for the businesses also. At KNP, what we are doing, we are basically creating a marketplace. So where any kind of the waste can be sold or buy or can be converted into the energy. Any green energy can also be purchased, and to do so we are creating a reverse logistic which is having a tech enabled reverse logistic where you can track, you can trace, you can see. Also in return we are also providing these carbon credits that are generated by your contribution, anybody who's giving the waste to us, giving back to them. So it is not like we are just doing some, any company wanted to participate into sustainability journey, they will just come and give, and they say, oh, no, we are doing some CSR activity by giving some waste to some companies like us. They are also getting paid back for that. So it can be in terms of their KPIs towards the sustainability, CO2 emission or carbon credits. Now come back to what we are doing. Currently, we are collecting this waste cooking oil. We are collecting from over 40 cities of India, 10 states, and we have built this infrastructure where we can even collect the minimum quantity of 20 kg also. We collect this oil and we facilitate conversion to biodiesel. Now, what is biodiesel? I'll give you a little background about the biodiesel, how it is beneficial, and what is the current status of this product in India. So there is a huge demand exists for the biodiesel because government of India is also pretty keen, because they have their own target of blending 5% biodiesel with the regular diesel, so that they can also meet their commitment towards the global sustainability targets. Not only sustainability, this is also cheaper. If you compare with the regular scenario, it is on an average 20 to 30% cheaper than the regular fossil fuel diesel. So there is an opportunity to save the cost. There is an opportunity to contribute to the sustainability. Now in India, this biodiesel is made from the four major raw material, which is the animal fat, which is the when we do the slaughtering of the animal, the fat which is left out. Second is the acid oil, which is the byproduct of the edible oil refineries. Third is the palm stearin, which is majorly being imported. And fourth is the used cooking oil. This used cooking oil, India is discarding every year over 220 crore liters of the oil. And out of this, as per FSSAI regulatory body, the 60% going back into the food chain. It is the government number. So this is going back into food chain, and this is the chain which we are trying to break and facilitating conversion into the biodiesel. Biodiesel, as Mr. Umesh said, it has a lower carbon emission, it has a zero sulfur. Even when you blend it with the regular fossil fuel, it has a lot of oxygen. So it enhances the existing fuel efficiency also. So it is going to, and of course there is a regulation available. Anyone, because in India, if you see anything which is cheaper, there's a lot many options will come up where you will the further people will start negotiating, people will start finding the further cheaper options available. In order to be safe while you are buying the biodiesel, remember there is a BIS standard given by the government of India. Anyone who's buying the biodiesel must ask what is the have you got the certification from the BIS or any accredited lab that it is meeting the criteria for the BIS specification. Second, Government of India has validated and it has a law. Biodiesel is generally sold only at 12% of the GST. Whereas right now, if you go to the market, so much of biofuel is being sold at 18% of the GST, which is nothing but it is some imported white oil or some paraffins. They buy it on the name of any adulterated oil and then start selling in India as a biofuel, which is not saving the environment. Actually, it is creating a more darker planet actually. So we have to be very vigilant while buying the biodiesel. As Mr. Umesh said, there's a demand and supply gap exists, but there is a more number of plants because we are into this fraternity, and every day every state government is putting a lot of efforts. So many pilot plants, there's so many different plants are coming. So if anybody is committed, they wanted to use it regularly, yes, product is available and they can always easily switch. They will save on the cost, they will contribute back to the society. If any questions regarding biodiesel, how you need to use any alternative fuels, because we are also we are see I'm coming from the startup community. Our startup is supported by IIM Ahmedabad, supported by the RICO, supported by the Vanastali, supported by the Ministry of Agriculture. We have got so many, supported by Triple IIT Hyderabad. We have got so much support from the entire ecosystem. So we are also connected to so many other waste which can be converted into energy. There are so many different startups. There are solutions available for every problem. The only thing we need to find the right partners for this. So I'll be very happy to assist anyone if anyone has any similar problem they wanted to address. Thank you so much from my side.
Thank you, Sushilji. Just one question from my end. What are the couple of three things you would advise us and our viewers on how do we choose the right partner for migration to biodiesel?
See, first of all, we should never trust any trader. Go and see the plant. Where are you producing it? Always ask what are the raw materials you are going to use it. Third is the BIS standards.
Okay.
So these BIS standards are given by the government of India, and we must ask for the right certification from them. Because what I have seen, people keep getting so many calls. We have a biodiesel, we have a biodiesel. They are selling the biodiesel less than the price of the raw material. So we must go and see what and how they are making.
Okay. And how do you suggest this myth which runs around that there is a problem when you use 100% virgin biodiesel in extreme winter conditions or in geographies where there is more winter, less than about, let's say, 20 degrees?
Right. This is not myth.
Should we mix diesel? Is it safer?
This is truth. This is the truth. In the winter conditions, of course, that when the temperature dips below 15 degree, let's say animal fat, which is like our skin, we also have a similar fat. It is always in the frozen state. So similarly, every raw material has a different characteristics. Like if you are using the biodiesel made out of the, let's say, used cooking oil. So this cooking oil is a normal soft oil, so it will never solidify. So it has no problem. So raw material plays a key role. Whenever, if you see animal fat, definitely when the temperature goes below 15, it has a problem. But now all the good plants based in India, you can always connect with me. I can connect you. They already got the facility, and they use some additives at least specifically for these 4 months to. Although it increases slight cost for them, but it runs smoothly, and it is as per the government of India guidelines. It is recommended to blend with the regular diesel. Government of India and none of the authorized vendor will always recommend to use it 100%. Blend it with the regular diesel. You will get a better efficiency and better savings.
How much?
It depends on your learning curve. Starting with the minimum 5%, you can go up to 20%.
Very good. Very good. So basically, with these inputs, we can ideally migrate fully to biodiesel and use it in all the months, even if it is winter.
Yes.
But just the difference is winter, you might mix a little diesel, a normal diesel.
Yes.
That's the only difference. But still, from a carbon emission standpoint, I think it will be. Yeah.
I'll give you an example. There is one of the hotel where we were supplying the biodiesel, and their temperature, because design issue was there in the summers also, their all parking was very cold. So initially they were using it, but the biodiesel started getting the issue of freezing. The only change we have introduced them, that we just asked them to use a small heater or some insulated box. So you won't face that problem of solidifying. But it's the only happens when the temperatures goes below 5 degrees and all. So no, if you have a small modification at the end, if your willingness to save cost, so this is the most important. You are going to save 30% of the cost, and GST also you are going to go return back. So if you have that intention of saving the cost, you will put all the extra miles which you wanted to do to safeguard the cost.
Thank you, Mr. Sushil. So, with that, I think we complete the round for discussion on all the points which we had intended to. I would want to give it back to Karvi so that she can help us moderate the session for the Q&A, which we would have received by now on LinkedIn. Karvi, can you get back to us on track
Yeah.
for the Q&A before we conclude, please?
Yeah. Sure, sir. Thank you so much. So I'll be picking 2 to 3 questions from our audiences, and I'll be opening the floor to every panelist. So whoever would like to answer the question can take it. So my first question is from Mr. Ratnesh Chaurasia. So he says that efficient utilization of asset is critical for logistics processes to optimize pack size and truckload optimization. How technology can help in improving sustainability in logistics. So I think the main focus over here is how can we leverage technology in helping improve sustainability in our logistics operations. So any of the panelists who would like to answer this can please take it.
Okay. Ashish, would you want to go for it?
Yeah, I can
Yep.
take it. So,
Yep.
yeah, I will take it if you allow me.
Please go ahead, Ashish.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the best
Mr.
option,
Sheikh, please
like
go on.
women. Yeah, Ashish, are you taking this? Yeah.
Okay, I think Mr. Sheikh, you can
Go ahead, go
answer
ahead.
first, and then maybe Ashish sir can add his perspective also to it. So, Mr. Sheikh, please.
Sure, sir. So as I will take the cue from, yeah, as I'll take the cue from Umesh. So TMS is a very good solution for this. So if you use transport management system, there you have loadability factor. So in every truckload, you can maximize it either in terms of volume or in terms of weight, depending on the rated capacity of the vehicle. So with that, you will also gives the report that how much is your loaded. So with that, you can utilize the maximum of that vehicle. So that will again lead to a sustainability in the sense where actually if you see today, I have done a study where we are using 70 to 75% of the load only is being utilized of a vehicle. So if we can increase that to say 90% or 85 to 90%, so over a period of, so in that way it will be a good example of sustainability. Yeah, Ashish, you can add to it.
Yeah. Ashish sir, you are on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I think TMS is very, very good example, and also there are 3D simulations which are available now in new gen TMSs. What we have done is we have also gone one step further. What we have done is we have started from our customer. So we are looking at what is the drop size that we have for customers, how many consumer units we are dropping to customer and retailers. From there, we determine how many consumer units should be there in outer packaging. So that's the first design. And once that design is done, then we say, is that design optimized for pallet loading? That means pallet footprint. And is that design optimized for vehicle loading? So we are working in that direction, that we start from the drop size to our customers and what customers do to retailers. From there, we work out what should be the ideal number of consumer units in a packaging, be it outer or inner packaging. From there, then we use 3D simulations to design the optimal outer carton configuration, which gives me at least 90% plus pallet footprint utilization, and also more than 95% plus vehicle loadability. So that's the design part. And using TMS, then on a day-to-day basis, we make sure that the loadability patterns in terms of number of SKUs to be used, what should be the placement of which SKU where, and so on and so forth, is a continuous optimizer technique that we do both for primary and secondary distribution. So this is the way we believe we can fully optimize all our assets and ensure also reduction in packaging, because we found that there's a lot of headspace always in any consumer pack. There are bottles where there is you know empty headspace in the top, so we can reduce the bottle thickness. We can reduce the packaging footprint and reduce. So not only reduce the packaging, you also optimize the packaging to have better footprint on palletization and vehicle optimization. So this is something which we've done in last 2 years with a lot of passion.
I just want to add one more
Perfect. Very, very good
different take on
practice.
this. So
Yes,
of course,
Somnath,
there
go on.
are a lot of,
This is a close to heart topic, it seems.
so a little, yeah. Obviously, optimization is something which is close to every supply chain professional's heart. Right? So one is about optimization internally and collaborating with the customer. I think there's a first step, and definitely it's the bigger chunk of optimization that we can do. But we are also seeing since there's a topic of digital element out here, we are also seeing a lot of new startups and ecosystem getting developed, where we can also see collaborations happening between organizations to deliver a us a load to a customer. So for example, there are solutions where there are people who are working on looking at optimizing the load across multiple firms, and incidentally they also find out the destination which is the same destination. For example, we have a customer who's located in a particular location, so they look at how do optimize that between organizations and probably optimize the entire load. So those solutions are also there, and that's now possible because of the digital thing happening.
Perfect. Thank you, Somnath. I'll just, Karvi, again, like I said, this is close to the heart. I also want to add something, if you may allow.
Sure, sir. Sure.
So Ashish spoke about 3D load building. Now 3D load building is within the truck for the particular case or a carton, you may call it, what you have to build the load inside the truck. You can also plan the load building on a pallet before loading it. So 3D load building can also happen as a 3D load building on the pallet, and you can eventually move to pallets getting loaded onto trucks. And we come back to again my favorite topic of palletizing transportation. Let's please palletize transportation. Reduce the dock time, improve turnaround time both for loading and unloading, and ensure that you can run the trucks more. One part of asset utilization which our audience Ratnesh spoke about is also utilization of the asset. Today, the trucks in India are 300 kilometers on an average per day versus Germany versus Australia 600, 500, 550. We are roughly half. So, and one of the key change which we can do is ensure that we palletize, which is the key difference between their truck designs and ours. Now, for that, of course, we need to work with the government, do advocacy, move to standardization truck sizes, yes. But there is still a lot of dedicated transport which we all do because we would want our invoicing locations closer to the demand to match demand and supply, and that much radius can still get covered into dedicated truck, customized trucks which can palletize, which is how we started initially, and today we have reached 85%. So that's also asset utilization we can touch upon. That's all what I wanted to add. Back to you, Karvi, for the next one, please.
Thank you, sir. All of the panelists has given their views. So, Mr. Sushil, would you like to add something upon that? I didn't want to leave you in this question. Is there anything from your end that you would like to add? Okay. So, sir, I'll be taking the next question from Hemasai Krishna Singh Arju. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. So he asks how to make recycled plastic eco-friendly. So we often hear about recycling the plastic bottles that we are using in our supply chain. He asked that if the recycled plastics can be made eco-friendly. So if like because we have experts from FMCG sectors also, I think you can give a perspective on this. So if Mr. Umesh could take it or Mr. Somnath, you could add
Yeah.
something on it.
So I think there's a lot of work which is happening on the recycled plastics itself. I talked about recyclability, which was the first thing of the one of the first R's. So most of the organizations have taken a pledge of moving it to 100%, and a lot of organizations are doing a great job on that. And I'm sure 2025 is a favorite year for many organizations for looking at 100% recyclability. And the fourth R that I talked about was also in terms of our PET. I mean our plastic, which is basically what is the percentage of plastics which is used in our products which is recycled. So that many organizations, including BioStuff, also have taken a target in terms of usage of recycled plastics in our products. Now, going back to my initial starting point, if you see, unfortunately, of the amount of plastic that we push into the ecosystem, only 14% is actually recycled, right? And most of this recycled plastic that is getting used as a percentage of plastic is the industrial recycle, which is basically leftovers in our blow molding, or in the process of manufacturing, what is left in the industry that is being used. The new area of work which a lot of organizations are working on is consumer used plastic. So how do you take the plastics which has been used by consumer, recycle it, reprocess it, and use that in our products, in our packaging. So that is another area of work. It is a difficult area of work, and difficult not only from product safety and so on. Sourcing of that also becomes a very difficult task. But that apart, there is also consumer angle to that. The organizations which are taking this bold step also are aware of the fact that when you use a consumer used plastic as a high percentage of plastic in your packaging, the looks and the feel, and at some point of time even the odor also would be something that comes in addition along with the plastic. So there is a certain amount of maturity that is being developed within our system also, and also we are expecting to build that maturity with our consumers to use plastic responsibly. So a lot of work is happening on that line. And I think these are things that is happening within our organization as well, and a lot of other good organizations as well.
Very, very well
Mr.
said,
Umesh,
Somnath.
would
Very
you
well
like to
said.
add
I'll
anything to
just
that?
add upon. Yes, I'm sorry, there is a lag. I'm just adding. So one also part which we can do is you can have recyclable plastic into other things which are non-products, but in the part of your supply chain or logistics. For example, you can have recyclable plastic getting contributed to production of your plastic pallets or plastic crates or any other interlayer sheets or any other item which you use in your logistics as your secondary or your tertiary packaging instead of primary. So that could also be one area which definitely we are looking very seriously towards.
Yeah, good point, Umesh. I just wanted to add that. So, we are also looking at, we have started using, taking the plastic that we take back as part of the EPR. So, we are talking to people who help us produce crates and pallets and, racks for our use with our extended partners, with our distributors and all that. We have started placing those racks with our distributor. It not only helps the environment, but also helps our customers, manage their place better. A small
Correct.
examples, but I think
Absolutely.
that's the.
Thank you. Any of the other panelists would like to add anything to the discussion, or should I proceed with the next question? Okay. So the next question I'll be taking is from Mr. Abhishek Luthra. He has a question on how do we solve the challenges of ensuring discipline in upstream supply chains, and how to incentivize and manage change with suppliers. Because he says that the mindset remains a challenge to adapt to any change. So, on that point, I'll leave it to the panelists to answer the question.
Ashish's favorite topic.
Sir, you're on mute.
Ashish, you went on mute.
Sorry for that. So I think this is a very, very pertinent question. I think when we start any initiative with our supplier partners or tier one or tier two suppliers, we have to show them the big picture. And the big picture has to be improvement in productivity, improvement in their cash flow, and improvement in their livelihood. So if we start from there, then the interest levels start. Because the first question they ask is, what is in it for us? It's going fine. Fine, our productivity is low, fine, but we're managing. So we start with the big picture. Then you have to put some expert with them in terms of improving their farming practices and show some quick results. and on a form which you can adopt as a demonstrable form or something like that, and then the traction starts coming in. And this is what we have experienced, that if you do these things well, if the intention is to improve the overall ecosystem, productivity, and their livelihood, people fall in place very quickly. But it requires a lot of commitment, a lot of interaction, engagement. You have to get in some KOLs at the village level, and so on and so forth. But end of the day, it's cash and economics. So the quicker you explain the cash and economics, people start understanding.
Thank you for answering
So
that so well.
yeah,
Yeah.
like Ashish said, any benefits or any mindset that you have to do, you have to point in terms of money. So you show them money, they will understand faster. Then you give any gyan to him. You show him money, he will understand.
I think I'll add one more leg to it. I think there's an increasing legislations around around environment and usage of various sustainable practices. That also is also giving a very strong push not only to brands, but also to the upstream people also to adopt and move towards products and services which are friendly towards that. So I think that's also is something which is helping.
Sure.
Yeah, indeed, sir. Also, we see a lot of customers also are preferring brands that are going the sustainable route. So, on that very note, I'll be taking the next question. So, this question is from Rupam Mukherjee. Monitoring key performance indicators that impact cost, giving you the ability to correct errors, improve cargo stacking, and pack trailer more efficiently can lead to fewer trucks on the road and reduce fuel consumption, maintenance, and expenses. So, can anyone take a toll on this point that he has mentioned on the key performance indicators, and how can one actually improve the stacking and make fewer trucks on the road and reduce the fuel consumption?
Uh, Actually, this is not a question. So he is trying to tell us, I think. By
Yeah,
key
so
performance indicators, it will have an impact. So what he's saying is correct, actually.
Yes, so anything that you would like to add to that?
What he is saying is correct.
Okay, so Mr. Rupa, maybe panelist
So
to
like we
agree
said,
with you. Yeah.
So I think from my perspective, what I can add here is that if your distance traveled to from your manufacturing location to the customer is less, if you can fill more in the same truck, if you can reduce the empty returns by backhauling or by synergizing other business partners, if you can have efficient biofuels, and so on so forth. There are a lot of other parameters which come in. Basically, like Umesh said, why should our truck travel 300 kilometers a day? Why can't it travel 600 kilometers? And there is a logistics company which came and revolutionized that by doing the pit stop model. So that was a very simple thing that you can do to increase your asset utilization. So there are various parameters, and all supply chain professionals, we do monitor that. From my side, there's one more thing that I'm driving the organization is that whenever we are starting a greenfield site or a extension to the brownfield site, we look at the total delivered cost and the total sustainable cost for that ecosystem. So that has started changing a lot of things, because earlier most of our decisions were based on financial incentives, that you're getting a financial incentive somewhere and you go and set up your facility over there, right? But now, since GST has come in, the financial incentives are very limited and not as big as they were. So we are now looking at what is the center of gravity of sales, where is our concentration on raw and packing materials, what is the total distance traveled, what is the sustainability cost, what is the carbon footprint, also along with other decision matrices, and that is helping us to optimize the value chain. So that is by design. And then there are operational KPIs that anyway we matter. So if we don't get our design right, then whatever you do in operational KPIs will be very, very incremental and small. So that getting the design right is very, very important. And now we are in a position to influence that. Earlier we could not, because if there's a financial tax holiday in Uttaranchal, yes, we go and set up a plant there, right? Because that overrides all other benefits. So,
Just
Thank you.
one thing to add
Yeah.
to what Ashish is saying on the design, and on a lighter note, I just want to remind that the last time most of us would have relooked at looked at our network optimization was 2016 going into 2017 GST. I think a lot of change in the market. I think the channel structure has changed. I think it's a good time to go back and probably have a relook at the network once again.
sure.
And I'm personally like to
I
do
would
I
that.
like,
think
I will also
bang
like
on
to add
Somnath.
something in
Somnath, I
this.
think Sushil,
See,
just one
what?
sec. Sushil, just one sec. So
Yeah,
just closing on the
yeah,
loop. I think Somnath, when we were migrating from 16 to 17, we were looking at warehouses in terms of network optimization as an invoicing point from a footprint perspective. I think what Ashish also touched upon is a brilliant point that we have graduated from looking at warehouses to manufacturing sites and capacities. Why? Because we have started to move to go more on single touch logistics. We have started to reduce. I hope you all remember the case, the famous case study of Britannia, where they migrated from own manufacturing to co-packs only by looking at this KPI, that how much is the VAD, which is volume weighted average distance, my product is traveling to reach to the consumer for a particular cluster or a state or a region. So let me try and reduce that, and that will reduce the cost automatically. So I think it's a more design question, but bang on. GST not only helped us relook at warehouses but also factories, which is a great graduation. Back to you, Sushil. Sorry.
yeah. No, no, it was really insightful. So what we have experienced earlier, like while working on the ground with the shop floor team, people just see box as a box. Okay, this is the box need to be shipped from one place to another place. Once we are able to inculcate the value of each box, that the box value is probably 10,000 rupees, then they start seeing the perspective differently and they start managing a different way. Similarly, now we should start looking at, just since we are talking about the alternative fuels and the sustainability, we should start populating the carbon footprint uses and utility in every steps which you are following. So people get to start, oh, what we are doing, what is the contribution we are going to do back. So and this visibility, first we need to educate how to measure it. Once we start measuring it, then we start populating it, then automatically the seriousness will also come up. And probably all the big organization has this infrastructure to measure it. And this is definitely is going to make a huge difference in the way people see the sustainability.
Perfect.
Thank you. So we are already
Yeah, yeah.
exceeding the time
Karvi,
here.
just to add to it, Karvi,
Yeah,
just
sure,
to
sir.
add to it from my side, see, earlier we logistics or supply chain people were not generating any data, right? Now, thanks to digitization, so post digitization, we are also generating a lot of data. So, and like the KPIs that Rupam was talking about, so we are measuring KPIs and now we have enough data. So whatever decision now we are taking is more informed decision, and we have lot of data analytics behind it, and so the decision is more accurate. And like Umesh said, our decisions are now backed with so many data, and that the decision is correct. And in a way, we are helping the organization in terms of cost, efficiency, many other parameters, not just only warehousing or only logistics. So overall, total cost of operation is now where all the supply chain professionals are now taking care of or looking into. Yeah.
Thank you so much. As we are already exceeding the time for the first panel discussion, I would now like Mr. Umesh to give a concluding remark on the discussion. So over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you, panelists, for increasing my industry acumen, and for the audience. I would request people who have not been able to attend to go to the recording, go to LinkedIn on the Logistics Insider page. We will also post it on the CVSCL page, where you can go through these learnings and take it back to your organizations. Again, like I said in the beginning, the primary objective of going this public as Evolve 1.0 for the first time as CVSCL was to give you a glimpse of what kind of knowledge resides within CVSCL, so that you can go to the cvscl.org page, and inquire about the membership and become members and increase this consortium so that we keep on adding more knowledge to this group. So thank you so much. I cannot end this call by not thanking a set of people who have been working day and night for this event. So thank you, Karthik. Thank you, Dharmesh, Manu, Mani, Ashish, Chetan, everyone, the entire governing body behind CVSCL who has made this happen, and also Saurabh and team, which will be having an interesting discussion, I am sure, on EVs after this. So that's all from me. Thank you, panelists, for your enriching discussion. Last note before we conclude on sustainability specifically. Let's not focus on protecting the environment. Let's focus on creating the world where the environment does not need any protecting. Let's try and graduate our thinking to that level. Thank you so much, and stay safe. Bye bye.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Well, it
Thank you,
indeed
everyone.
was a brilliant, thank you, sir. It was a brilliant, brilliant session by our panelists, and I would like to extend my gratitude to all of you for taking out time today and joining us over here, and enlightening us on the importance of sustainability. And thank you, Mr. Umesh, for moderating the session to perfection, and you steered it to the right direction. So thanks a lot. And audiences, the questions that have not been answered, I'm sure our panelists would be more than happy to revert to those questions later on. So please don't be saddened by that. And please stay tuned for our next sessions on EV. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. Now, as we move forward, it's time for our next very exciting session. The topic for this session is quite close to my heart, and I am quite sure that a lot of you wouldn't want to miss on this discussion about the big revolution in the industry. And yes, you got me right. I'm talking about the electric vehicles and their role in the last mile delivery segment. This shift to electric mobility and last mile delivery through EVs has become necessary now more than ever, owing to the fast depletion of fossil fuels, increase in energy costs, environmental impact of last mile deliveries through petrol, diesel vehicles, and of course the digital intervention. Now, market and governments both have succeeded in demonstrating that electric vehicles could deliver the practicality, sustainability, safety, and affordability characteristics expected from the adoption and implementation of many modern technologies in last mile deliveries has been accelerated during the pandemic, and we are sure that we'll continue to do so in the aftermath and create a competitive advantage among the players in the industry. The government authorities have also helped in the adoption of EVs in the last mile during this time and relatively untapped market potential. Electric vehicles are now poised to become an integral part of India's last mile delivery space. So, on this very note, I would now like to call upon Mr. Saurabh Goel, who is MD Just India, the moderator of today's second track on the topic EVs all set to revolutionize last mile deliveries. Welcome to the show, sir.
Yeah. Thank you,
So,
Karvi. A pleasure.
yeah. Thank you, sir. Mr. Goel is an entrepreneur and tech enthusiast who is responsible for just development in the Middle East and Africa region. Starting his career with DHL, he has been associated with the industry for almost 2 decades now. He's also the founder of ThinkLink, which is a warehouse design and automation firm. He is very passionate about building world-class supply chain capabilities out of India and has keen interest in leveraging technologies to drive supply chain excellence and sustainable supply chain programs, including usage of EVs. He's also a member of the governing body of CVSCL and leads the Startup Connect for CVSCL. Mr. Goel, I'm sure you're equally excited to start this discussion on this revolutionizing topic. So, without wasting any time, I would like to hand over the baton to you. And prior to that, a quick reminder to our audiences. I hope you remember the drill. Please drop in your questions and queries in the comment section, as our panelists will be taking them towards the end. So now I would like to hand over the stage to you, sir.
Thank you, Karvi. I think excellent time to look at EVs and their impact on logistics and how the change is happening. I yesterday, right, Ola launched their electric scooter. I just saw 100,000 people in India, book the scooter on day one, right? And I'm just coming home from a flight. I took in the morning. I came home in an electric car. So very clearly, right? I think across the board, everywhere, EVs and electric transport is catching up. Uh, as a continuation of the last panel on sustainable supply chain, which Umesh led, and obviously with Ashish and Somnath and Sheikh and Parveen, I think it was a wonderful panel talking about overall sustainable uses of energy across the supply chain, and the EV piece they left for us to sort of deliberate on further. Uh, Within the EV piece, right, there are many questions that people are looking at, lithium ion versus hydrogen technologies, whether it is good for last mile or it is good for long haul. And across the world, so much investment is going into this overall development and deployment of EVs, both for personal mobility as well as for commercial logistics, use cases, right? So we have an excellent panel here today, and I'm sure all the panel members with all the experience they have across, actively looking at uh, using EVs in their supply chain and deploying, and what sort of challenges and success stories are coming along. They will be very helpful in uh, telling our audience about where the state of EV deployment is and what we can expect over the next 6, 12, 18 months as EV deployment gathers further pace, right? So without losing much time, I will start inviting our panelists and introducing them. First up, I would like to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Vijay Nair, who's the VP for Reliance Digital, the digital business of Reliance Retail. And he has been with Reliance for about 6 years. Before that, he was with Hypercity. Before that, he was in the Indian Army, a veteran. And I have known Colonel Nair for about 15 years now. When I met him first time when he was at Hypercity. So obviously, he's seen a lot of development in the supply chain side over the last 15 years. Welcome, Colonel Nair, and it's a pleasure to have you on the panel. Please go ahead and yeah.
So thank you, Saurav. Thank you, the Chamber of Visionary Supply Chain Leaders. It makes me sound very nice. It gives a very good feeling. Thank you for inviting me. So yes, it's a time. I think it's the right time to get into this kind of discussion. Just 3 days back, Maharashtra improved their EV policy and announced in the newspaper. So I think the awareness, which is one of the major factors, is gradually catching up. I think we are very well timed for this kind of a summit so that we improve the awareness within our supply chain community. Thank you, Saurav.
Thank you. Next up, I would like to introduce Dr. Amitabh Saran. Amitabh has about 28 years of experience with multiple institutions like TCS, Philips, NASA, Hewlett Packard around the world. And now he's the CEO of Altigreen Technologies, which is based in Bangalore. And they are working on developing high efficiency electric mobility, right, for last mile transport in India. So he's at the thick of action, right? So Amitabh, pleasure to have you on the panel. And why don't you introduce yourself and add to whatever I already said?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here amongst an august audience and an eminent set of panelists. I'm really looking forward to this. I'll probably be taking more on the the vehicles themselves, what it takes to actually make supply chain and last mile logistics possible. So I'll be talking from an OEM's perspective, and hopefully that will be an interesting topic as far as EVs are concerned. The future is EV.
Right, please go ahead. And that's where the whole fun lies, right? Because the state of technology and the quality of vehicles is eventually going to drive, right, the adoption. So where the OEMs take us is where we will go. And then so we're hoping to hear a lot of good stuff from you. Next up, I would like to introduce Ankur Singhai. Ankur heads the e-commerce logistics vertical for Mahindra Logistics. Mahindra Logistics is actively looking to grow their EV deployment. I know in the e-com side and otherwise as well. Ankur has been with Mahindra Logistics for about 7-8 years. In the past, he has also led the consumer and pharma vertical, as well as agri logistics. So Ankur, welcome to the panel, and hoping to hear from you on everything that's going on around the EV side.
Thank you, Saurabh. Thank you for having me over. As my co-panelist said, it's an interesting time. And I personally believe that we are at an inflection point. Different use cases are evolving, and it's going to be anybody's guess in terms of what different use cases actually get adopted, right, and actually scale up to a level where they start making sense from a logistics perspective. So thank you for having me over.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. Last, I will like to invite and introduce Abhishek Dabas. Abhishek and me actually go back a long time. He was a junior of mine at college, and he's obviously come a long way. He's now the COO of a company called Yellow. Yellow is a subsidiary of the Petronas Group, the large Malaysian energy group, and they aim to be India's leading clean mobility company. They want to be India's leading clean mobility company, providing electric vehicle fleets for cargo delivery, obviously helping build a more sustainable delivery infrastructure, etc. Their plan is to ramp up to about 1,000 electric vehicles by the end of 2021. And in the process, they would like to be able to deliver about 100,000 clean kilometers every day for last mile delivery. So it's a very ambitious goal. Abhishek in the past has also been involved with the sustainability sector. He was a founder and CEO of a company called Zolt Energy, where they were bringing affordable clean energy to homeowners, right, for personal usage, right. Welcome on board, Abhishek, and happy to hear from you.
Thanks to invite me, Saurabh, and happy to see an esteemed set of panelists. Good afternoon, Dr. Amitabh. We've been in touch, trying to get these vehicles on the ground.
So as part of our like Petronas new energy initiatives, we're part of the Amplus group, and we have been installing solar power plants all across our e-commerce customers and other customers. So this is an extension of the same vision. So where we want to deliver clean electricity, similarly we want to deliver clean kilometers. So to base not just to reduce tailpipe emissions in the cities, but also look at how the whole value chain can be clean energy run. So yeah, looking forward to an interesting discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, I think a lot of things happening, right? Obviously, in the last panel also, panelists spoke about the fact that direct to home deliveries have gone up dramatically over the last year or two on the back of COVID, and even otherwise, which again is leading to, I'm guessing, an explosion in the need of last mile delivery and also the type of last mile delivery which happens. Earlier it was to a shop, more and more happening to home, so more intense last mile delivery, right? And in the Indian context, right, and tailpipe emissions is a great thing that Abhishek spoke about, right? Obviously, right, we all know, depending upon which part of the country we come from, just the pollution on the roads, right, and the fact that you can take it out of the roads and hopefully switch it at the back end also with clean energy somewhere is a great opportunity to completely change the nature of energy we use. One other thing, which I think partially Sushil spoke about in the last panel, from an India perspective, right? I think fossil fuels, we are deficient, right? As a country, we are deficient, right? And therefore, from a balance of payments, economic development perspective, great opportunity for India to also use EVs, potentially change the mix of energy that we use, right? Which has a very strategic impact for us over and above the general EV sort of context. So that's the background. The idea is to obviously hear from all of you on what's happening, what is driving use cases, how do you see success happening, what are the challenges, and so on and so forth. And that's what we'll try to do. So without wasting more time, I will go to Colonel Nair first up. He comes from the user end, right? He's the guy who's generating all the demand for all these vehicles in his supply chain, or in supply chains. Users are looking to say, do we have a use case for deploying EVs, right? So Colonel Nair, why don't you tell us, what is happening on the ground? Why are EVs developing so much interest now? Why now, right? And over the last 12 to 18 months, especially, right? What sort of progress have you seen when it comes to EV development and deployment? Please go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you very much. So, absolutely right in what you're saying that EV mobility is going to be no doubt the next explosion in the auto industry, and we are going to be the consumers, or major consumers of this particular explosion that is going to happen. Companies have invested vastly in their technology with regard to development of electric engines, electric batteries, and so many things which are there which need to come in it. So your question has got about two parts. One is, where is the interest coming from? Why is this interest coming from? And what is the current status? Let me tackle the interest portion with just a few numbers. So today we have in the mobility field and the mobile phone field, we're selling about 155 million mobiles in a year, of which nearly about 45 to 50% goes through e-commerce route. All the e-commerce delivery happens through either LCVs or through motorcycles, bikers, that is. And we have the food delivery. I was amazed to see this figure over there. We do 3 million deliveries a single day through Swiggy, Zomato, Uber Eats, and the likes. 3 million is a massive number. And how are these getting delivered? They are getting delivered mostly by two-wheelers. We have got 23 million Tata Aces on the ground today. They are actually flying. Now, in 2018, there were 3 Tata Aces, there was one Tata Ace which is being sold every 3 minutes. So you can imagine where these vehicles are all being deployed. Tata Ace is not a personal carrier. It's a load carrier. And all these load carriers are used for intra-city and last mile. So if you just see the mammoth size of the number of vehicle and the amount of load that they carry, that itself is a use case for how much of EV potential is available in the country. So to talk of why is the interest coming, I don't think it requires any more explanation. Now, the next thing is something which Abhishek spoke of and even Ankur spoke of, is that there is certainly, besides the fact of being green and responsible for going green across the supply chain and value chain, there's the responsibility of ours also to make sure our costs are kept low. And the only way we see it now, with the petrol and diesel rates touching 100, is to find alternate means of delivery. The most expensive component of a supply chain is the last mile delivery. and last mile delivery rides on petrol and diesel. So there's it's out of question that anybody who does not go into the EV area is actually missing the bus now. And as I said, if you miss the bus, then there's catching up doing. But what is it that is causing us or delaying the adoption? There are a few things which I'd like to talk of. Number one, which I talk of, is that today the model which we follow. Today the model which we follow is that a owner comes with his Tata Ace and he deploys it and we pay him, or a biker comes with his mobile and we pay him per delivery cost. Now, when it comes to investment in this particular area, the model itself says that you come with your EV. So for the initial deployment phase, and since our model in supply chain does not believe in investing in vehicles and bikers as is in vogue today, so he has a higher investment. So the adoption is slightly low. For us to get used to this business, so there are a number of course, during the panel we'll discuss, can we only buy the chassis and keep the battery with us, which is the most important component, which the companies can do. That's a method which can be adopted. Second is that to see how what SOPs the government can give and how much cheaper can they bring it to bring it equal to the cost of a two-wheeler or a Tata Ace, so that the investment level is kept down. So a SOP which is not equal to it may not drive the benefit. So these are something which, as a supply chain body, which will push with the government and things like that. Current state of adoption, if you ask me, we are as low as 5% in the supply chain, and 5% is I will not say it's too bad, but I'll say it's just a starting point. For the reason that we all are waiting to see what the other is doing and learn from that. And it's a syndrome in supply chain that let's see what he's doing and find out what he has learned or not learned, and then we'll follow.
Yeah.
So it's a thing. And another thing which is there constantly when I, as a supply chain planner, I got this, which is commonly called as range anxiety. So I know that my vehicle can fly 80 to 100 kilometers. I need to make sure they're charged overnight. So in a scenario when we do not have charging facility across all points, so that means my beat is not greater than 40 kilometers. So if you look at a last mile delivery within a city and with kind of a hyperlocal kind of delivery, 40 kilometers appears to be adequate, but I will always carry this range anxiety if I do not have a battery swapping mechanism or a quick battery charging means. Now, these are the reasons why I feel that the adoption is low, but
Sure.
very much we all are thinking in this direction. Everybody is thinking in their direction. There are pilots on in all the companies to find out how it works. I find, I think it is Fresh Basket or somebody who's running this chota yellow color bikes, which are those the low mileage, low speed bikes, which does not require a license, that less than 25 kilometers. So it'll happen, and ultimately we'll arrive at a formula. We'll arrive at a mix of low KPL, low mileage vehicle, high mileage vehicle, three-wheelers,
Sure.
and four-wheelers. That's when the adoption will actually commence happening. At the moment, I don't even think we got enough options. So it is something like you have to set up an infra for the implementation to happen. I think everybody is waiting for the infra to get in place, because to set up the infra itself is probably the biggest challenge at the moment. Produce the vehicle is, or the battery is not the bigger challenge. It's the overall environment ecosystem that needs to be put in place. And if that happens, you'll find that the adoption is beginning faster. This 12 states which have adopted EV policies, once they get on the job, it's just commenced. It started in 2019. 2 years we lost it. We didn't have anything really happening. I think it'll get kickstarted once again now. And once the infra comes up, the adoption speed will go.
Sure. I think great points, Colonel Nair, right? And I think one of the sort of important things that you spoke about is that here there is there is a product development side, and product development has to sort of catch up, right? And second, I think you also spoke about the fact that this is still not sort of completely plug and play, right? Because an ecosystem needs to develop, right? And therefore, it's not really plug and play in that sense. People need to think a little bit more. And the good part is, of course, on the panel today, we have all people, who are from pioneering or leading companies. So hopefully people who will help set up that ecosystem. One other thing, interestingly, I was seeing that, Dr. Amitabh was very happy when you were talking about the use case and the millions of vehicles which are there. So he could see that, future is sorted, right? And I'm sure he was hoping that we can run a ticker below where people can go and just block his vehicles right on the show itself, right? So hopefully that will happen as well. Yeah. So thanks for that. Ankur, why don't you take on from where Colonel Nair left, right? And tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing on the ground. You're a logistics company, right? You are bridging in some ways demand between the end user and also suppliers like obviously Dr. Saran, right? And also in some ways maybe trying to figure out the ecosystem which is needed to be able to run this more efficiently, right? So why don't you tell us about what you're seeing in your organization and in your conversations with people?
Right. So I think as Lieutenant Colonel Nair said, right, every segment is trying to find its own use cases, right? As far as e-commerce is concerned, right, I think if you look at traditionally, volumetric deliveries, right, and at the end of the day, it's the money which counts, right? So in e-commerce, I think there's a sweet spot which I think we've been able to identify, because bikers have restrictions on the volumetric load which a biker can carry on his backpack, right? And at the other end, you have vehicle, a small commercial vehicle, a sub-ton vehicle, right, which has the volumetric capacity, but it requires a driver and a delivery associate who actually goes out and does delivery, right? So with a three-wheeler EV, especially with the L5s coming in, right, we think that there is a sweet spot where the volumetric, demand is kind of met, and at the same time, in terms of cost, the delivery associate cost can be done away with, and a driver come delivery associate who's actually riding the three-wheeler, right, EVs and doing the delivery. I think that's the sweet spot we've been able to identify, and I think which the market is now lapped up, right? And therefore we see, and as I said, right, we see an inflection point in terms of demand, and that's where we see a lot of OEMs coming in, including that of Amitabh, and coming in with the right set of products, right, which is kind of driving the change on the ground. Having said that, apart from e-commerce, we are also seeing multiple use cases in case of automotive industry, right? Especially where we have a milk run kind of a setup, where a just-in-time process already exists, right? So you have a OEM plant which needs to be supplied in time by suppliers in and around the plant, right? And therefore we see a fantastic use case emerging over there as well. And as my co-panelist said, not everything is perfect. I think the ecosystem itself is evolving, right? So whether it's in terms of the overall, how do I actually balance between the charge which is available versus how much load I can carry within the permissible limit, right? That balance, that optimization. On the other hand, you also have range anxiety. So for that, what kind of charging infrastructure I have available, and obviously in case of cities, right, where parking is a major hurdle, right? Even for irrespective of whether it is an EV or a ICE, parking is a big constraint, right? And in case of electric vehicles, it kind of amplifies, because you need to have a vehicle parked at a particular point for a slightly longer duration of time in terms of getting that charge going, right? And obviously the last impact, which is I think a work in progress, is understanding if this kind of takes off at the scale, what impact will it have on the overall grid, right? I think that's a longer term discussion, and maybe I think for a different panel. But I think these are some of the things which are happening in the ecosystem, which different players are observing, including us, right? But as I said, from a use case perspective, we are seeing a lot of different use cases evolve. And we feel that it is it is the right time, and it's at an inflection point, right? And with that in mind, we started what we call as EDEL as a service at Mahindra Logistics, and we've kind of scaled up to more than 300 vehicles right now across almost 8 cities, and we have seen that the adoption is only growing, right? And the number of use cases within e-commerce, right, is only growing. Obviously, there will be constraints because of the load carrying capacity. So, for example, if there's a heavy and bulky or a large appliance delivery, that may not find a use case, right? Or even in case of grocery, while grocery as a segment has seen some adoption of electric vehicles, but in terms of again, the load carrying capacity becomes a constraint, and it is more for a hyper local kind of a demand scenario where we are seeing some of the use cases involved, right? So that's our perspective on the the entire EV space.
And just as a sort of thought, right, with the current state of technology and the initiatives that you are running, right, this 300 number that you have over the next 6-12 months, where do you see this?
So obviously, I think we are continuously looking at this space. I think a lot of OEMs, including Dr. Amitabh's, are coming up with different kinds of products. And as we see more and more product offering coming in and different use cases involving, I think it can easily scale up to 1,000, maybe more than that, right? So we'll have to wait and watch. We'll keep, I think we will keep waiting and watching, and at the right set of time, at the right point of time, make those investment decisions.
Sure. So I'll take it from there. And Abhishek, if you could come in, right, and talk about experience, obviously Colonel Nair and Ankur shared, right, and where are you with, let's say, your initiatives, and how is it going, and what are you seeing on the ground in terms of actually building an EV fleet, both from a product perspective, infra perspective, right? What are you seeing, and what are the early experiences?
Yeah. So we started in around 2019. That was like really early days on at least the three-wheelers. The first batch had kind of arrived. When I'm saying L5 three-wheelers, not the e-rickshaw, the smaller ones, but basically what Ankur has been talking about. So so that is where we bought a few vehicles, and like in a typical PE kind of a sense, where we essentially gave our vehicles to a e-commerce company so that they can run them, and we can basically take, it's like we're into the kilometers. We are not really a logistics company to begin with. So, but the product quality was thus that if, let's say, I bang the door to, like, if the door is broken, I can't tell if it's a product fault or somebody actually pushed it too much. So we kind of backed off. They said, we can't run. Our drivers are like completely flabbergasted with it, and you run it. So we started hiring drivers, and we basically went through the whole cycle. And I joined 1.5 years back. That's since then I know Dr. Amitabh. And I went around and basically figured that the better vehicles are still some distance, and then COVID happened, and that product side that has taken some time. But now policy everybody has talked about, and I would say the product inflection point is here. The Mahindra's vehicles are here, the Piaggio vehicles are here, Alta Green is here. So while there are two camps, I would say, on the product side, one is a grounds up electric vehicle which is designed like Mahindra, which is and the other side is where you're looking at more like a fuel type change from diesel to CNG to electric, which kind of, in my opinion, has more acceptance from Colonel Nair said, that driver operator model, like that person has that feeling, only the fuel has changed, the rest is something that I've experienced with. But as a fleet, we can still kind of do a cost benefit analysis and do a comparison. So that is where I would say the inflection point on the product side is there, and I'll leave that to Dr. Amitabh to take it further. And also, like Ankur said, on the driver side, when you're talking about driver come delivery guy, so when I came in, that was a very exciting sweet spot that suddenly from upwards of 50,000 rupees for a delivery, you basically reduce 2 manpower to 1. Right. So that was very exciting, but like somebody else, somebody wiser than me said, but that competitive advantage will go away, and it went away. And to be honest, today we see eco guys also, the poor guys have to drive alone now. They don't have a helper. Right. The whole advantage is gone, to be honest, because that was a huge cost advantage. And, ICE engine vehicle guy will not sit idle and let the business go away. There are policy push, like no entry exemptions and all those things. But I also see that, slightly that the manpower. So see, we are talking about something new. Everybody's, figuring out how to work together. Today, we are open to leasing it to other 3PLs. We'll run it ourselves. We'll set up the charging infra. There are other OEMs which are being logistics companies. Which don't intend to be logistic companies, in my opinion, in the long run, not like Mahindra Logistics, but they are running their vehicles so that everybody can sample the goods. So everybody is collaborating a lot. But somewhere I think in all that push, we saved basically we moved that 2 people manpower cost to 1 person manpower cost. If he could have just left some of it for that manpower, because he's not doing almost double the task. Yes, it doesn't have gears and anything, but he's driving and delivering, carrying, and he's the key person taking this forward. So that could have been nice, because with all the product uncertainties that are there right now, because everything has its maturity cycle, uh, last mile delivery being a commodity, EV based deliveries has become perceived commodity. It's still not a commodity. There are a lot of risks around the products. That's why that driver operator model is not going to come in. That's where we all have to work together and make it happen. But for that, there has to be something. We all together have to kind of enable that ecosystem also to function. If we just go beat down on the costs, because there have been savings, right? 2 people to 1 people, that's like 1/3 saving in one shot. Like it doesn't really happen that fast. So that is one experience that we had. We mostly around product we have had experience. What has been lacking on the last 12 to 18 months has been the O&M kind of support, which is now with the organized players coming in. So that's something nobody talks about. Everybody talks about capital expense. Everybody talks about running costs. O&M is an uncertain, on 2 parts. On a day-to-day basis, how on a monthly basis as fleet guy, what I'm incurring, and when will the batteries go bust eventually? That cycle has to be seen. The mass scale, while the warranties are 3 years, how much they will run, in what temperature, all that data, performance data we are collecting, and we are evaluating different vehicles. But that's also defined. So that point will come where the masses will also say, okay, this thing works, because they've seen the whole life cycle of the product.
Just to add, Abhishek, right? Today how you see it, right? And I think Tata Ace is or Chota Hathi is the comparison that mostly people are sort of looking at. Where does the economics on this really stand, right? Converted into a per month 80 kilometers, whatever, right? The standard intracity commercial template, right? Where does the economics stand versus, let's say, going and taking a Chota Hathi or a Tata Ace, right?
So see, in some use cases where you don't really need that Chota Hathi, like Ankur was saying, you don't need that 180 cubic feet of space. You just need a 120 cubic feet of space, where these vehicles are definitely cheaper, right, compared to that. Now, obviously, somebody has ran it through, paid off his loan, and he's in the year 6 to 7, 8 of his, and he's a driver operator guy. But a fleet guy running a Tata Ace and a fleet guy running a electric three-wheeler will definitely be a priority, conditional to how much he has to run, what use cases. Last mile, like like what I said, that 40 kilometers is good enough. We don't see more than 40 kilometers being run. But having said that, the overnight charging, all the fancy things that catch the eye of the world when you talk about EV, the swappable batteries, the fast charging, they're not applicable to these products, right? Like other than a couple of them. Even Mahindra or Piaggio vehicles have to be charged overnight today. That they are low charging solutions. So you have to find that parking space. You have to set up that infra. Even if I spread out those chargers across the city, my vehicle will have to stay for 4 hours, to charge it, and it'll lose that advantage that no entry permits actually give that. So that's been a challenge. But otherwise, the economics, I think more than the economics, the interests have to be aligned today. Whether it could be X rupees per month for your 26 or 30 days of 12-hour shifts, or it's a paper delivery, which would change depending on what you're carrying. If you're carrying groceries, it could be about $1, or if you're carrying smaller packages, it could be much less. But the thing is, interests have to be aligned. Whether I think Ankur will know this much more than me. If you're doing a per order delivery, you're taking all the market risk, which you should not be your risk to take. There has to be a hybrid revenue model, which some of the e-commerce players have, and so that which covers your base costs and then gives you an incentive to perform. Right, the fixed driver operator revenue model of like you come to work, do your 12 hours. Is actually negative to the e-commerce company, right? Because then he's just doing the minimum, and you can only penalize him if he's not turning up. But how do you incentivize it as he performs more without penalizing, like passing all the market risk to it?
Sure, understand. Thanks, Satan. So yeah, so Dr. Amitabh, right? It's beautifully set up for you, right? In terms of where are we, quality of product, what's happening, how much journey we've traveled over the last 12, 18 months in terms of being able to support these use cases, and what are some things that possibly will continue to roll out. One other thing, I think it would be good if you could talk about is, in the industry, people talk about this L5, L6 classification, etc. Now, within the industry, small group of people, I think it has become, common vocabulary, right? But to the wider market, people don't understand, and it's got an impact, right, in terms of certification, etc. Right? So would love for you to also talk about that.
Hi, thanks. So very good views, and I truly appreciate the invitation over here. Just because I think it sets the stage really well. It's clear that for India and the emerging markets, the needs of this geography are very different. And when I say needs, I mean environmental needs, the needs of the unprofessional driving that you typically see over here. Anything that is considered abuse anywhere else in the world is a day-to-day case in India, right? And over the last 100 years, petrol, diesel, LPG, CNG have performed really well. So we have a very strong competitor, and I always say that our competition as electric vehicle guys is not other electric vehicles. It is fossil fuel. And until we can make vehicles that compete in price and performance, both factors, price and performance with conventional vehicles, I don't think we can make a big dent. Now, also please realize that this is, change has just started happening. Even though we've had EVs in India since 2001, it's still a very nascent stage of progress in terms of EVs and their adoption. I think the first and foremost reason for that is always the quality of the product, and I totally agree. I think a lot of products, irrespective of whether they came from our neighbor or they came from Japan or they came from Europe or US, they were not intended, they were not built for this geography. So either they didn't perform well, or they were too high priced, or spares were not available. Whatever it is, the supply chain did not exist for them. So first and foremost, the thing that's changing in today's environment, and we're really excited about that, is the innovation and the development that's happening for the supply chain in India. And I talk about Altigreen, for example. The only thing we import today is the cell, because we still don't have, and of course microprocessors, because there is no fab plant in India. But other than that, everything is 100% built in India. It's taken us 8 years to get here. It's not something that can be done overnight. It takes a lot of money to do it. I mean, it took Tesla about $450 million to reach where they are. But today they are the best vehicle ever built. It requires a lot of commitment to be able to do something. And I'm not saying that we have the most perfect vehicle. And by the way, just for the record, Abhishek has not tested our vehicle yet, so it's not my vehicle that has failed.
No, I test drove your vehicle in the initial days.
All right.
Again,
all right. You're not supposed to talk about your experience. We didn't prepare him for that. All right, please, let's go ahead.
That said, I think in terms of the quality of the products, things are improving dramatically. I think, like the other panelists have said, a very sweet spot with respect to B2B, e-commerce, deliveries, that entire logistics, last mile logistics is something that is definitely performing, is the sector that we are all focusing on. Now, within that, what happened was credit to the e-rickshaws, a lot of those imports coming from China, they were typically supposed to be replacements for the manual rickshaws. They were called the L3 category, all under 25 kilometers an hour, under 2 kilowatt, motors running on them. So there were a lot of imports that happened. Good part is that about 1.5 million, 2 million are already in this country. You will never see a single ad for an e-rickshaw ever. 2 million of those are already in this country. They're all getting charged. Ek zamana tha when people used to say ki wo kaanta dal ke charge karte hain and all that. I've been through 4 states. I've spent a lot of time in each of these, just trying to understand the ecosystem and why it developed, how they are trying to compete with the Vikrams of the world and the small auto rickshaws, and how they compete with that, and the lead acid batteries versus lithium ion batteries. There is a proper system that has evolved over a period of time in these places. It's no longer kanta dal ke sab log charge kar rahe hain. There are fields where they come and they park, they pay a certain amount of money for that. They will get a fully charged rickshaw. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying if there is a need, then the system evolves around it. And I think that's something that we are seeing. As product companies, we will have to be cognizant of this. We can't keep waiting for the charging infrastructure, for example, to build or develop. And we will have to take one thing at a time and make sure that at least, like for example, make a vehicle that can do 150 kilometers, right? It's a battery pack after all, right? So why does it have to be 40 or 80 kilometers? Why can't it be 150 kilometers? In the worst case scenario, with overheating, with ambient temperatures of 45, 50 degrees centigrade, with overloading, with unprofessional driving, you'll still get 110, 120 kilometers. So at least get rid of that range anxiety. I've always said that we are not in the transportation industry, we are in the peace of mind business. If it's livelihood we're talking about, it's something that can have zero downtime. A lot of this is governed by software. So you have to have vehicles where there is very, very good software running, so that you can always monitor them, always connected. You can monitor them to again ensure minimum downtime, if at all. And if there has to be downtime, it should be non-business hours. So I'm not saying the problems have all vanished. Yes, you will need to park them somewhere. Yes, they will have to be charged, but perhaps you can do faster charging. I'm not saying fast charging. I'm not saying you need lakhs of rupees of DC fast charging, but still you can have faster chargers that can charge in 3.5 hours, give you that 120 kilometers. Can some of this be partially done, while the vehicle is loading and unloading at the warehouse? So those are examples where we've seen that, and case in point, our own vehicles we've tested for e-commerce type deliveries and grocery deliveries where you require very short turnaround times. We've been able to get over 150 kilometers where you get small bits of charging. So you get 15, 20, 25 kilometers, 25 minutes of charging while the vehicle is loading, and then it goes away and then comes back and goes away. So there are various new models that are evolving. L5 is the category we are after. L5 is the typical, rickshaws that you saw, the diesel cargo three-wheelers that you saw on the roads up until now. The Bajaj Maxima, the Piaggio Ape, those are the standard, the workhorses that have been around. Unfortunately, just by their very nature, they were relegated to, garbage or gas cylinders or, water bottles or cement gara and those kinds of things, absolutely. And the Tata Ace started getting used for your last mile deliveries. And, Ankur has mentioned it very clearly that, as a vehicle that is supposed to carry, a ton, if you're carrying no more than 400 to 500 kg on it, you're spending 9-10 rupees a kilometer plus all the maintenance charges versus, electric vehicle that costs less and operates also at less. But of course, this is a vehicle that has already been bought and you have the benefit of the driver owner. But if you were to look at the entire cost as a 3PL, you would realize that if you are starting new, so you're buying a new electric vehicle versus buying a Tata Ace, volumes and all that, again, we've kind of bridged that gap. Today, Altigreen's vehicles have 177 cubic feet of space. So, there are new products that are coming. The field is evolving. Just be patient about it. I think things are changing very rapidly. If we have support from the various use cases that are being addressed, I'm sure that vehicles will only get better, and you will start seeing better performance in all of them. And I'm not talking just about Altigreen. I'm talking on behalf of all the EV manufacturers in this country. Yeah.
Sure. So 2-3 things, for takeaways for me from what you said, right? One is obviously, right, and I think partially other people also said, right? I think one, the nature of EV deployment today is a more systemic deployment, right? Connected vehicles, being able to get juice out of it, infra being available. And we've run transport by wanting to keep our hands off it, right? Just leaving it to the truck driver on the road to sort of do it, right? Which is what Abhishek wanted to do when he started also. But that doesn't work, right? You will have to take a very different approach to running and developing this EV model if you have to get efficiency out of it. That is one sort of takeaway which I sort of get from everything that all of you said, right? Second, also what I sort of hear is that currently this L5 model, which is probably the model which is the version which is sort of most deployed, is really not a direct replacement for Tata Ace. Don't think of this as a direct replacement for Tata Ace, because that is what will possibly lead to expectation mismatch. But there is a very large use case where Tata Aces were probably overspec'd, right? And therefore, there is an opportunity to downsize from the Tata Ace spec in a way, but right fit to the use case, and there's a big market out there for that, right? That's the second thing I had. One thing, I wanted to just ask you, right? If you had to take a bet, right, and I'm sure you're taking a bet on this, 2022, right? Today now we're in 2021. In 2022, how many L5 vehicles will get sold in India? Yeah, for you.
You asking me?
Yeah, of course you. You're the one
Yeah,
who's betting on it.
yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, we're betting big on it. We're betting big, and the current orders that we are seeing. Plus, once again, it's also got to do with the variants that will be coming out. I would imagine that it would be in the 50,000 odd number
Not bad.
in
A very
2022.
rapid scale up. A very rapid scale up. Wonderful. So I think we've gone around one time. We'll go around again. And I will invite Colonel Nair to start a little bit. He already partially spoke about this in the first go. But Colonel Nair, if you want to add something about what are significant challenges that you see which will inhibit this really scaling up over the next 12, 18 months. 12, 18 months,
So
24 months.
yeah, so Saurabh, Amitabh also spoke of it. Everybody spoke of this. First, I mean, the first thing which I see is that there is one hell of a lot of last mile asset which is currently existing. What are you going to do about it? It has to be either phased out or replaced. So until that happens, who is going to fill the space? The growth may pick up the EVs. Whatever growth may go through the EVs. So growth, depending on industry wise, what is the last mile growth? Of course, there's a very healthy growth of nearly 38% which is happening. So maybe the growth will be picked up by the EVs. But what about the current existing assets? There are 170 million motorcycles today. A large component of them is also in the delivery business. Unless these gets phased out in some form or the other, the adoption of the new EV vehicles for the last mile delivery is going to, I mean, the space needs to be created. I think the number one challenge. Second, of course, is while we are creating the space, we need to create the awareness and competitive model which will replace each of these assets. So, because if you are going to replace a motorcycle or if you're going to replace a old Tata Ace, what are the equivalent that we are getting to it? How does it work in terms of cost benefit and the operational efficiencies? Is something which is an awareness campaign that needs to be spread by the OEMs and people
Sure.
and the government to make sure that, because this is not only not only an initiative for bringing the EVs by the OEMs and the manufacturers and the likes, but it is for saving the overall spend of fossil energy in the country, is also for the overall initiative of saving the environment. So it's not exactly just not a single initiative of the manufacturers.
Sure.
Next is that, again, like I mentioned earlier on, for the EVs to actually function to its full potential, we need to actually be looking at the ecosystem and where they will function. Some use cases say that these are best used in rural areas. There's some cases that say that they are very good in the hyperlocal kind of deliveries. So how do we enhance the range? How do we enhance the charging capacity? How do we enhance the second battery availability? That's swapping of battery kind of a business. And how do we enhance the charging? So, or charging stations. Do we have these charging stations? Can we establish our own, say, as a retail company or a e-com company, can we establish our own charging stations? Is there some entrepreneur which will take over areas within the city, 5, 6, 7, 10 areas where the charging station can be established or swapping stations can be? This is an entrepreneur's, there's a scope over here for business. And I'm sure if EVs get adopted, until they get adopted, this may not come up as quickly. So
Sure.
it's a kind of a chicken and egg. Somebody who takes the initiative will actually be the front runner and maybe have the first mover's advantage. There are some other things which are slightly at a larger level, maybe at the city planning level and the town planning level. How do the electric boards, the state urban planning, and the transport teams, transport departments come together to set up this? Because it's not an individual business, it's an infrastructure, it's an ecosystem business again. So the whole machinery has to come together, partner with the manufacturers, and in a kind of a public private partnership establish this environment. Then of course the question of innovations, something which Abhishek spoke of, so and Amitabh spoke of, sorry, on what are the innovations that we are bringing up. What are the changes that are going to happen in the battery? Are we going to have smart batteries? Are we going to have a have this charging grid which is established? So these are things which are not there, which we have seen only in paper. I know that Norway, I think, has got this thing well established. They are, I think, the highest users of EVs in the world. In terms of 70% of the vehicles, I believe, are EV vehicles which are running in the country. Then we have finance options. That's again a government-run kind of a thing, along with our banks and places. Financing options will also increase the rate of adoption. Attractive financing options with subsidies will also increase the rate of adoptions. So these are something which we have not yet done.
Sure.
And once we start doing this kind of stuff, that's the only way we can actually start increase the rate of adoption of EVs in the country. Saurabh.
Sure. So, yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. I think very, very instructive, right? You spoke about obviously infra ecosystem from a charging perspective. You spoke about obviously, financing awareness. You spoke about, right? I think all of that wonderful, all of that very relevant, right? I think the piece around, city boards or city development councils looking at this. I know, right? Certain development institutions like, let's say, the World Bank, etc., are today commissioning studies in India to see how cities can, be incentivized to build infrastructure specifically with regards to categories like last mile delivery. So I think some of that will start sort of coming into play. Abhishek, coming to you, right? And obviously, right? See if you can add additional things to what Colonel Nair said. But also, right? As you look at building a fleet of 1,000 vehicles, or your sort of mandate to build the leading clean mobility sort of company in India, are there things you are now trying to solve systemically? Some of the things that, let's say, Colonel Nair spoke about, are you solving some of that systemically, or are you seeing other people solve them systemically, and what's happening on the ground with regard to that? And obviously, if there are other things that you see which are inhibitors in addition to what Colonel Nair already spoke about, please share those as well.
So one thing that we've started doing now, is initially, for example, we try to work out swapping solutions and all those things, but we realized that in the e-commerce space right now, till there's density, that kind of doesn't work for us. And while that overnight charging was there, to do those routine turns, but if they have to do improve my asset utilization, I have to do some kind of opportunity charge, or maybe have that person pick up another job. So for example, a motorcycle guy today could be delivering milk basket in the morning, and doing their lunch and dinner with Zomato, whereas during the day it's working with big basket. That kind of optimization, if we have to do, we have to actually increase somehow the range of these vehicles. And also a couple of use cases that we are now exploring, we see our vehicles stranded all around. So we have to figure out. So like Dr. Amitabh said, today how it's figured out is because there's this L3 network. You figure out a place where it's being charged, you charge, and you come home, or but those are obviously not to the spec that you would expect. This is an organized sector, so we are building our own small network, which will be exclusive for us for right now. Because what happens is, on a shared network, there's always a problem of bunching. Everybody has to go to work at around the same time. Everybody has to charge overnight, so that kind of doesn't work. So that's what we are looking at building. Now, one thing that when Colonel Vijay said about the awareness exercise around it. So this is a very data intensive. All these vehicles have telematics software, which throw up a lot of data on battery performance and how the range is. They can help reduce range anxiety. If you can envision, even for solar, for example. There are a couple of initiatives, or rather, if you look at Tesla, you can see the vehicle performances or their solar plant performance online. So it also becomes a sales tool, not just for your operational management tool. You can see your neighbor is generating so much clean energy, or there are so many electric vehicles on the road in Delhi. So assume, maybe not specific to cargo, but if you think the passenger cars for that, there's just a map and you can just check it. How many are actually running. That could be a big awareness exercise. Then around the same experience, it's important to manage the expectation. Like you said, from the Tata Ace to a 3-wheeler, a new category, and all that. There's another huge expectation gap. The potential, hazard rather, is around the performance of these vehicles when we look at how they run. Because a diesel engine is an inefficient engine. If the variation in performance, if you really drive very carefully or you rash drive, accelerate and reduce, doesn't change a lot. But whereas in electric, it's a storage, it's a battery. If you're actually driving rash, your range will reduce drastically. So I think that's where there's this huge hue and cry about the Tata Nexon, and basically the range which was promised and the range which was coming, and there was this whole Delhi subsidy kind of a
Sure.
news coverage around it. But and they said, and they will teach us how to drive, because that sensitization also has to happen to the
Sure.
drivers, because I've been driving a vehicle for 30 years. I'm a doctor, and you can't tell me how to drive. But the awareness that needed to be created was that you're consuming its more energy efficient engine, and how you drive will actually impact a lot more on the range. The same two-wheeler of one of the leading companies, or another, it can give you a 50-kilometer range and 100-kilometer range, depends on how you run it. So that's on the expectation and the network side. I think these are two things, and the awareness. I thought I'll just add my 2 cents. Yeah.
So I think so. What he's saying is that I think given that these are more connected products, right? I think there's a lot of data available which can be used to create the awareness, campaign much better at a individual user level. They can see what's happening with the vehicle, and overall also, right? Because you have all the data available, it's going somewhere in. You can sort of publish that out and make the use case at a given point in time, and also over the life of the vehicle, right? I think that's a great point. Ankur, anything that you want to add, and then we will ask Dr. Amitabh to sort of wrap it up and sort of give us an answer to all these problems.
Great. So I think from an immediate challenge perspective, right, while people have, or from a driver community perspective, there's range anxiety. But from a fleet owner perspective, or as somebody who owns the asset, I think biggest anxiety right now, biggest challenge which I see is the speed of product development, right? So I don't know how future products will cannibalize the existing products, right? And this is something which I'm sure a lot of fleet owners are looking at. And therefore they will continue to monitor in terms of how the spaces evolve, right? Within 1 year, we've seen the cubic kind of go up from 120, to what Dr. Amitabh is talking about, 180, right? And, I think that will be a great challenge for the industry to solve. And I think, but it's more of a transition challenge, right? The other aspect, I think, which Abhishek touched about, right, is data, right? And I personally feel that, in passenger space, at least we've seen mobility as a service evolve, right? So we have, Ola, Uber of the world who have come and disrupted the market, right? So it fundamentally actually changed the need for owning a vehicle, right? But on the supply chain side, or on the logistics side, I think with electric vehicles, the amount of and they being connected, right? The amount of data which it's going to throw up, right? It's not going to be only battery. It's also going to be about the entire optimization, so on and so forth, right? And therefore, I feel that at some point of time we'll start seeing this entire segment of how it will become, just like how mobility as a service has evolved, right? We'll see. I don't have a term for it, but I'm sure in the next few years we'll see this coming in, as a very important element, right? And therefore, there will be a challenge in terms of who owns the data, right? So when a product is sold, right, all the components are sold. And I remember my conversation with Dr. Amitabh a few days back, right? This is something, I feel that will have to be thought through, right? And obviously, it also means that there will be a lot of collaboration which will be required, right? And obviously, not only that, there will be, with the amount of stress which is being given on data related loss, it is going to be another big set of challenge coming around it, right? Because we will know practically everything what is happening on ground in terms of where the vehicles are going, right? How the driver is driving. So whole lot of data is going to get generated, right? So in coming time, I think this is going to be a bit of a challenge, right, for the industry to solve, right? Apart from that, as my co-panelists mentioned, right, immediate is going to be in terms of the entire ecosystem and how it evolves, right? But I think it will solve for itself, right? We've seen that in some industries, practically the solution has there are players who've come and disrupted the market, and we see that there is no reason why it may not happen in the EV last mile delivery space or the logistics space. In fact, we see it being extended to possibly other segments of vehicles as well very soon. But yeah, that's what that's what I would say our perspective is at this stage.
Sure. Thank you. So, Dr. Amitabh, just to sort of, summarize the questions, right? And maybe you can give your take on it, right? And you partially answered it in the first round as well, right? So you said range anxiety is not a big thing. It's just about putting up a bigger battery pack, and obviously, right, you have to get the performance and the commercials figured out for that. So let's for a minute, maybe park that aside, because it's a function of how much battery you're putting it inside, right? But from an ecosystem perspective, shared charging networks or swappable battery networks, or systems where you have all this data coming in, and Ankur spoke about who will own the data and how will that data be used. What are you seeing, in terms of development in these enabling infra and services to be able to make EV deployment successful? And also, in addition to that, if you see some major changes happening on the product side also, which will further hasten deployment.
Great. So I think on the product side, the one big change that's happening from ICE to EVs is that that one size fits all that you had in ICE. यही गाड़ी है, अब इसको 500 ला दो या 1.5 ton ला दो. This is the vehicle that you have, and you figure out how you want to do it. I think there'll be a lot more subcategories that start getting created when it comes to EVs. So there will be people who will be using it for a specific application. So from an OEM perspective, we will have to have a platform play, a platform that allows us to migrate up and down on that platform. So I think that would be key. Once again, as OEMs, we cannot lose sight of the fact that these vehicles, irrespective of whether they are being used in last mile delivery or last mile transport or in whatever category, they will have to undergo abuse. It's not going to be a perfect case, and it might not be with respect to the driving abilities. It has to do with the road infrastructure and water logging, and you name it, right, of all these challenges. So we will have to be cognizant of that. There's a lot of work being done. I can say for sure that a lot of work being done on the technology side, not just on building motors and controllers, which are the heart and the brain, but it's clear that going forward, data is going to be the differentiator. After all, an electric vehicle is like it's like a gadget on wheels. So there will be a lot of software driving it. PhD in computer science, something I have to also do in my own company. But the important thing is differentiators are going to continue, and this software differentiation is something that is going to percolate down all the way up to, which will not only just be limited to the vehicle, but also the data that is coming in the form of financing of these vehicles, financing of specific drivers, insurance, warranties. All these are now going to be a lot more dynamic because you have instantaneous data coming from the vehicle. It's not something that happens after the fact. It's on the spot. Number two, I think in terms of efficiency also, and being able to manage specific use cases, the same vehicle or the same category of vehicles can be used in a much more efficient manner, rather than saying, well, this is going to be the mileage of a diesel vehicle, whether you use it like this or like that, right? So you can tune everything. Now, there are standards against OTA in this country. So
sure,
we have to be very cognizant of that, because then, what differentiates us from the Dieselgate that happened in Germany a few years back versus what is happening now. You test a vehicle, and then you do an OTA and you change the software in it. So, why am I getting the subsidy if everything's changed on it? So we have to be very cognizant about these things. I think there will have to be standards that get created in which we, kind of segregate that and say, okay, this can be changed and this can't be changed when it comes to OTA and those kinds of things. But there's a lot of work happening in that area. Data is going to be very key, but more than the data aspect, it will be the analysis of the data and what you do with it. I think
sure,
that is not something that a lot of people are focusing on, but I do believe that is going to be, because that's a very specialized area. That's
sure,
not the domain of every computer scientist. It's also a data of data science people, right?
And it's also a user problem. It's not only a product problem. It's about your use case, how you use a given product in a given environment, right?
Absolutely. So no disagreement. I think so. You'll notice a lot of evolution. I think let's not try to jump the gun and say that EVs have arrived and EVs are the next frontier. They have arrived, they are the next frontier, all that is there. There's a huge difference between what was happening over the last decade. Lots of things have changed, but we still are not saying that it's a solution for every problem that exists in the market today. No, it's not. There are specific use cases, and for those use cases you can't find a better product than an electric vehicle for it. And I think that's where the adoption is. It's a huge market, so let's not try to say that market
Sure.
opportunity doesn't exist. The market is
Yeah.
huge, and I think there are very, very good use cases for it.
Great, thank you, thanks a lot. So I think our we are sort of running a little behind on our overall panel discussion time. I would like to invite Karvi back and see if she can help us take questions from the audience. While she does that, one quick question from me. Any one of you can sort of answer that. Anything from a government support perspective which is lacking and should be additionally done, right? Anyone, Dr. Mitab, you can go, and Karvi, in the meanwhile, please see how we can start getting questions from the audience. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
You see the smile on my face, right? It's things are improving. The government is cognizant that it will have to do something. It's not easy. It's not easy. Colonel Nair mentioned about Norway. 30% of new vehicles being sold are electric over there. 30% of the market is electric. It's a huge step compared to 1% in the rest of the world, right? And that's happened a lot because of subsidy. Subsidy has been something that's around for in every country. I'm not saying that that's the model. Anyone who's worth their salt, any OEM, will not be creating a business model on subsidy because the cost of batteries and all that are coming down. But it's clear that the government is doing things. I think one thing they're missing out is to mandate that delivery fleets will have to have a small percentage of their fleets convert to electric. I think that's the only thing that's missing at this point. Beyond that, I think there's a lot of good stuff happening, and things will, it's a continuum. Things are changing, they're improving. Like to hear what the others have to say. As far as an OEM is concerned, I do feel that there is movement happening in the right direction. That's what I would say.
And you voiced your request from the government on the right panel, right? Because CVSCL is something that obviously everyone is coming in and listening to us, right? because that's what we're trying to do: create a platform where very contemporary sort of issues are discussed, debated, and I hope it happens. So, please go ahead.
So I would like to add one part on the government side is that while subsidies are a very big enabler, they bring down the cost like 20% approximately. Makes it very affordable. They could also be a very big disabler and stall the market if they're not disbursed on time, or if the underlying conditions, if it's 31st March and from 1st April, circulars not come on time and all those things.
Sure.
While this might look like, something, but if you look at the preceding years on solar energy, commercial industrial took off. Well, finally, they could convince that we don't need subsidies. And so the whole market could take its own form and shape, and have their own contracts, and basically the free markets took over. So that, not today, subsidy support is required. It's coming. We just saw our customer side of the subsidy hit our bank account. So yes, so there's money flowing. so that's flowing as long as it's flowing. Yeah, but if there's a stall, that should be communicated and owned up. So because otherwise it'll stall the market. That's
stable, clear policy that people can work around, and execution of the policy.
Yeah, so there's a very age-old, like the worst thing you can do it to an illness is change the medications frequently. Give it some time to act, and these things take time. Yeah,
sure, makes sense. Karvi, please go ahead.
Yeah, as I see, the panelists has already ended the discussion on the note where the government bodies are standing, in the adoption of EVs. So my first question is going to be on very similar lines from Mr. Nishant Kumar Sharma. His question is basically, he asks that government bodies, what are the challenges that they are facing in the implementation of EVs and biodiesels? And he also adds that even awareness of biodiesels and EVs are not available in the society in India. So what are the steps that are taken to make people aware? Because obviously the fuel prices are going high every day, and we need to adopt not only in a sustainable manner, but also, keeping the cost of logistics in place. So I'll open the floor to the panelists. Anyone who would like to add upon that?
Yeah, anyone who wants to talk about, let's say, some few things the government has done in the last 12, 15 months to support adoption, right? I think that would be good. Anyone can take
Uh,
it, whoever.
yeah. Also, just adding there, if you could also tell the challenges that maybe you as an organization are facing in making the shift, because any
Sure.
shift comes with challenges, of course, even if it's for the better tomorrow. So I'll just open the floor to the panelists now.
So I think from our perspective, I think the governments, whether it's at local level or state or even at central level, have been very proactive in terms of rolling out, formulating and rolling out policies. Right. I think what we are looking forward to is a faster and a speedier implementation, right? And as well as having a platform where all the different ecosystem partners can come and collaborate, right? Especially around parking and charging. I think especially in metro cities, I think that's one aspect which, if we find a faster solution to, I'm sure the adoption can actually multiply, right? I think there was a follow-up question in the pop-up which I saw, was in terms of milk run. As I said, we are seeing stronger use cases in milk run kind of businesses where there is a pickup, right, happens, whether it's on the e-com side, right, where you have first mile pickups which happen, right, or even on the auto side, as I said, right, where we are piloting certain initiatives, where we do a milk run pickup from suppliers and get it to the OEM plant. So I think uh, apart from last mile, I think that's the next big thing which is happening, right? And you will see multiple use cases of it evolving, even on the consumer side, right? If I were to extend this to FMCG, with the evolution of the entire, while you all have read about D2C model, we are also seeing a lot of FMCG companies pilot DTR, right, or a D2R model, where they're trying to take the products directly to the retailers,
Sure.
right? And therefore, we again see some pilots happening in that space, and that is akin to a milk run model, right? And I remain hopeful and confident that that is a model which is going to evolve, right? And obviously, with different product sets coming in, or different, as Dr. Amitabh said, different platforms evolving, we will see that adoption happening at a much rapid pace.
So what I hear is that government has been supportive at a local level. It is supportive. It is trying to obviously catch up pace, and there still remain things to be done. Dr. Amitabh, I think you wanted to add to that something probably.
No, I was just giving a thumbs up
All right.
to Ankur. I think he's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Wonderful. Are we?
So the next question I'll be taking is from Anirban Mazumdar. So he asked that EVs are being adopted fast, particularly in the last mile and the sustainability theme. But given that lead recollection and disposal mechanisms are not evolved yet, is there any study or clear view on the real effects of EV adoption, and is it really sustainable? I would like Mr. Amitabh to maybe answer upon this. I think you'll be apt to give a insight.
The lead or lithium, either way, right? Recycling and sort of end of life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So trust me on this. There's a lot of work that is going on as far as battery recycling is concerned. Not just in terms of recycling, but also the next life of these batteries. It's clear that, and this is not something unique about India. I mean, we've had this problem. Hybrid vehicles were introduced in the US, I think, a couple of decades back, maybe even longer. So there are batteries that come out of these vehicles. So what do you do with them? Solar is a classic application, because at 70% state of health of the battery, it becomes useless for transportation. But it's still very, very good for solar applications. And then, a very interesting use case in India is, of course, inverters and, UPS systems. That's a unique case in India. Up until now, we were using these heavy VRLA lead acid batteries. Perhaps it's a great opportunity for us to have smaller lithium batteries that can replace those. So I don't know, but the idea is that a lot of the lithium that comes out of these cells is going to get recycled. Perhaps you will also notice that instead of lithium, there will be a lot more other kinds of chemistries that will show up in the coming decade, including aluminum, sodium. They're a lot better. Don't be surprised if there's nuclear fission and fusion also at some point in time. It is going to happen. So just consider batteries as a black box right now. There are a lot of people working on extracting, little bits and pieces out of it, just to make it overall
There is
sustainable.
stuff happening, and there are use cases, and a recycling loop or a end of life loop is sort of taking shape, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And just to add to it,
Are there any other
another
questions?
second life. Sorry, I was just adding to what Dr. Saran was saying, that another use case is that second life batteries can actually act as storage.
Karvi, any other questions?
I think Mr. Abhishek was adding on to it, so that's
Yeah.
why I held back. Yeah, last mile deliveries very much moves parallel with e-com, which is growing. At such an extent, especially during the pandemic. So I'll be taking the next question from Mehuli Chaudhary, who asked, "What are the measures that can be taken to make the e-com supply chain overall sustainable?" So
Ankur, I think it's up for you.
yeah, so if you
Right.
could please
So
answer.
I'm sure, right, when you look at, transportation obviously is one of the aspects, right? But from a overall e-commerce delivery perspective, right, a lot of effort have been put by platforms in terms of sustainable packaging, right? I think that is one of the key focus areas. I'm sure you would have read reports about how some of the platforms have actually migrated to a single-use plastic, and in fact, looking at how do I actually get plastics completely out of the, or are working towards getting plastic out of the entire packaging thing, right? I think apart from that, we've also seen, even in terms of the real estate footprints, where warehouses today, which are dependent, let's say, on either on the EV power or the electricity mode power, or on DG sets where electricity is intermittent. We see a lot of investments happening in terms of grade A warehouses where solar power is being used to augment the already available power which is available. So I think these are some of the initiatives which the industry is taking, apart from the you know apart from the last mile piece which we discussed, right? And I'm sure other panel members, if you have anything to add, please. But these are some of the initiatives which at least I am aware of.
Colonel Nair, would you like to add anything upon that?
Yeah, I mean, it's when you say of being sustainable, it is to do with how green you are, and one of the measures is the last mile delivery adoption of EVs, and as and when they do come in, yes, of course. Second is, of course, sustainability also includes utilization of capacity. How less do you use, or how much of the capacity utilization are you doing, or how much of the capacity being unutilized? That's also a part of sustainability. So small things like reduction of paper, everything is a part of sustainability. Using battery operated vehicles inside MHEs inside the warehouses, solar power, using of solar power for recharging your assets within. So a lot many aspects which we all are practicing those. I think now it has become a new normal that we have stopped using diesel operated MHEs. We have stopped paperless warehouses. It's very common to be a paperless warehouse now. I think the next thing which we need to be stepping towards is the EVs. As and when they come, we will there will be a very substantial, large step that we'll take, which is going to bring up sustainability in a very big way, and overall responsibility towards the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I'll be taking up one last question, and it is from Gaurav Dubey. So he asked, by which year, as per the panelists' forecast, will we be able to see EVs running on roads in huge numbers, and petrol and diesel-operated vehicles will come in minority on the roads? So, experts, could you please respond upon that?
So it's a pretty
Everyone can
interesting.
take a bet.
That's a googly. I think all throughout the discussion, Saurabh was kept asking us what are you going to see after 2 years. So
No,
it's
I
I
think
mean, I think we all would like it to happen as soon as possible. Like many of us have mentioned during the discussion, it's not going to happen immediately. We'll have to wait. We'll have to, for the entire environment to come up, entire ecosystem to be set up. We'll have to wait, and to really put a finger and say that after 5 years the equation is going to change. No, I don't think. I don't know. I'm not specifically an expert to say that, but it'll take time. But if it will happen, it has to happen because there's no other way. There's no other recourse. We have to switch over sometime in future.
I'll
Anybody?
actually, I'll flip this question, right? So for people who are traveling or were used to traveling, right? I don't know if you noticed, right? When you land into Delhi airport now, right? You see the fleet which you get, right, for cabs, they're already electrified, right? And it happened very quickly, right? And I'm sure you will see the same pace in even in the commercial EV space going forward.
Yep.
Absolutely. I
I
think the
wrote a
use case, yeah, the use case for commercial vehicles is very, very clear. And I think that's the segment that is going to convert. Personal vehicles probably will take a little bit of time, but I think in across category, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, taxis, cabs, buses, commercial vehicles will be the first to convert, and in huge numbers by 2030.
Mr. Abhishek, would you like to add anything? Or
Yeah.
Mr. Saurabh, anything on
So yeah, just one thing is that yes, I completely agree. 10 years is what a diesel is given a life, and if you average it out, you'll see huge. If like Colonel Nair said, growth will come might go to EVs. So when they get phased out, that will come to EVs, and we'll see that happen sooner than before. There are some challenges will get sorted out in a couple of years. Also, by the time the OEM manufacturers will bring in some really nice four-wheelers for us to use for intercities. The three-wheeler batteries would have run their first life, and they could be put in second life to set up intercity transportation networks, which are really easy to set up technically. If you look at it, you have a land behind your solar panels, energy being generated, stored in the second life batteries of these three-wheelers, and then fast chargers dumping that power into the fleet running intercity Delhi, Jaipur, Delhi, Bangalore. You can imagine there's enough land around, and you don't have the line issues that typically with power distribution. You just set it up. So yeah, that's kind of a vision. 2030, I would say, quite possible. We'll see what we can do to make be a part of that story.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Saurabh, anything on that? Your
No, I think
forecast?
clearly, right? I think Dr. Mitab makes a great point. I think deployment in CVs is much easier to do than in the personal mobility space, right? Because it requires personal change of behavior, right? While in a commercial vehicle environment, in the logistics industry, right? If the use case is clear, it can be rolled out as a program, right? And therefore, I think it's a more disciplined program, more controlled program, and therefore you can, within the use case, you can sort of scale it up. So I think it will probably happen much faster than whatever we think it will be, right? Because this is how inflection points happen, right? When they happen, they just happen very, very quickly. They take us by surprise.
Thank you, Mr. Saurabh. Well, this was indeed a very interesting question, for our audiences also to get a perspective of the industry experts, because who better than you all to actually forecast upon the complete adoption of EVs. Now, Mr. Saurabh, as you have moderated this session, I would like you to please give a concluding remark on this session, and then I think I can take over. So over to you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So first of all, obviously, pleasure having Colonel Nair, Abhishek, Dr. Saran, Ankur on the panel, listening to them, obviously, right, they are spending in different capacities a lot of time on the EV deployment, development, rollout issue, right? So a big learning for me as well, right? Just trying to understand the state of where it is, and takeaways from me, right? I think within specific use cases, specifically intra-city, in specific types of environments, probably product is ready. Obviously scale up needs to happen. Certain amount of user infra or shared infra needs to happen. The other takeaway for me, obviously also that, I think government is proactive, supportive, but yes, from at a city level or from a financing perspective, or also from an awareness perspective, I think a question on that, and Colonel Nair also spoke about it. I think more needs to be done. Probably government has a role. OEMs also have a role in that. So I guess it all seems to be well set to say that over the next 2-3 years, we will continue to see a lot more development and deployment, especially in intra-city last mile applications. And then probably over that period, more product will start coming in, which will start extending this to maybe short haul intercity or long haul intercity over a period of time as we sort of look ahead. So excellent panel. Thank you everyone for giving your time. And, I'm sure it was very instructive for everyone. Thanks for being here with us. Thank you, Karvi.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. This indeed was a very, very electrifying session, and I extend my gratitude to all our panelists for taking out time from their busy schedules and enlightening us upon EVs in last mile delivery, which is indeed a very trending and revolutionizing topic in today's world. And my special thanks to Mr. Saurav for moderating this session to perfection. So thank you to you as well, sir. So with this, now I think we come to the end of today's refreshing and thought-provoking virtual event, which is Evolve 1.0. And I would once again like to extend my heartfelt gratitude for everyone involved in this event today, and for giving us such an invigorating experience. Today's discussion have reiterated the fact that change is the only constant, and we shall take with us the suggestions and highlights from today and hope that innovation will be able to convert the advantages of today's into opportunities of tomorrow. So before I sign off, I would now like to call upon Mr. Dharmesh, who is the governing body member of the Chamber of Visionary Supply Chain Leaders, and who is also the VP of SCM Agrotech Foods, to say a few words and pull the curtain down. So over to you, Mr. Dharmesh.
Thank you, Karvi. Thank you so much. And thanks a lot to all the panelists. It was really an insightful session. And we learned something about the EVs today. This is something which is very, very, I think, new area where actually, as all of you very learned panelists, you all spoke about your experiences. And I'm sure in the coming years, this is going to be the technology which the supply chain is pretty much will be using, and it's really the requirement of the time now. And so really we look forward for the how fast we can actually adopt the technology, and a lot of things have been talked. So I'm sure the our audience would have definitely benefited, and we really look forward for this technology to come on the in a way which is can be used, as we talked about. It's not only it's the today there might be a limitation of 40, 50, 60 whatever kilometers within the city, but I'm sure we look forward as soon as possible we get into a situation where most of our fleet which can run onto the EVs. So that would be really great for the country. As citizens, I think it will be, we look forward, especially in NCRs when we actually face the pollution. So I think we know the value of the EVs. So really, I think it's not only the cost, but I think the whole environment and the health perspective also. I think that's the very, very, I think, important, I think, development which will really help the supply chain. So thank you so much, all the panelists, and thanks, Saurav, for moderating this great session. And first session, which was also really, it was very insightful about the sustainable supply chain on the alternative technologies. So that was moderated by Umesh, who's the president of CBSCL, and we had some great speakers, which is I'm thankful to Ashish Pandey, who is also in our CBSCL, part of CBSCL, Somnath Das from Nivea, thankful to him, Mr. Sheikh Asad from BGuard, And then Sushil Vaishnav, he talked about the biodiesel production and all the BIS standards, etc. So that's, I think, is another very, very exciting area, which is the biofuel, adoption of the biofuel. So I think these are the very, very, I think, useful technologies, which is really going to shape the future supply chains. I am also thankful to all my colleagues from the CBSCL, which is Karthik, Mani, Manu, Ashish, Chetan, and Saurav yourself. You have done a lot of actually work behind the scenes. So, we really value it. And our thanks to our media partners, Logistics Insider, which is they have put us actually first time we have actually used this platform, and really I think it is wonderful, and which will be, I'm sure, like the next session which we will have very soon. We look forward to having the next session, which is again on another some new topics which will be very useful for all our members, and not only members. This time we have opened it for everyone from the supply chain, our community, so that everybody can participate. So thanks a lot, all the panelists, and thank you, Logistics Insider, our media partner. With that, I would hand over to Karvi. Thanks.
Thank you, Dharmesh sir, and thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks to our audiences for joining this enlightening session. And indeed, this is currently one of the most important topics that needed to be discussed and addressed. And I'm sure a lot of panelists and shippers were keen on listening to this discussion, and will also listen to this once we go offline. I would like to make a very important announcement, which is that CVSCL's membership is now open for the industry shippers as well. So you all can find the link to join CVSCL in our description. And just thanks and my gratitude to everyone for joining in today. Thank you.